and welcome to the opening drive. Brooke Grimsley here. Randy Kerber with the day off. He is out enjoying a golf tournament this morning, and Danny Mack, he will be out until Wednesday. He also has a golf tournament coming up. So we have in studio today Brandon Kiley. BK, at this point, I can't even say that you're a guest. You're kind of like another member of the opening drive team.
Monday exclusive. That's
Monday
what I'm here
exclusive.
for. I'm happy to do it. It's great to be with you guys. How you doing?
Doing great. How was your weekend?
It was fantastic. Lots of good sports on. It lived up to the billing, considering last weekend was such a letdown for the most part. Good college weekend last weekend, and then the NFL Sunday was just brutal. This weekend, it was just great all around. Plenty of baseball. Blues, great game on Wednesday night. We had a couple of good days in the football side of things as well, so plenty to get into today.
Yeah, we will have a lot to talk about today. We will have Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, coming up later in the show. And as BK mentioned, we'll talk a lot about college football, NFL, and we have to talk about baseball. Last night, the Yankees and the Dodgers will be in the World Series. It's everything that the baseball gods wanted. It's everything that Major League Baseball wanted, of course. After the Dodgers overpowered the Mets 10-5 last night, your NLCS MVP is none other than the Dodgers cleanup hitter, Tommy Edman. Just as everyone expected, congratulations to Tommy Edman, your NLCS MVP. BK, it's everything that I expected, honestly. When Tommy Edman was moved over to the Dodgers, I was expecting great things for Tommy Edman. Of course, he was dealing with injuries and early on the season for the Cardinals, but then when you knew that he was going over the Dodgers, I was expecting him to do great things. I said last week when we were talking about the players who are expected to do the most this postseason, Cardinals-wise, the former Cardinals players, I picked Tommy Edman, and he's done fantastic. 4 RBIs last night, including 2 homers. In the series, he hit 407 with 11 RBIs.
This one doesn't sting to me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it doesn't sting the same way that it did when, like, you have Randy Rosarena going on and doing his crazy Babe Ruth thing in October, or Adolis Garcia, who went on to do Tommy Edman had a really good Cardinals career. This was not a guy that did not realize his potential here in St. Louis. This is what he could have done in St. Louis. It wouldn't have surprised anybody if the Cardinals had put a team together around Tommy Edman, where he's a supplementary piece, and he goes out and has a really good series or two. The problem is they were never able to fully get that version of themselves. The Dodgers have Mookie Betts and, when healthy, Freddie Freeman and, Shohei Ohtani. So, yeah, Tommy Edman can go out there, be a supplementary piece, and you love what he does whenever he is in that role. He was asked to be a little bit too much here in St. Louis. I'm not surprised at all that he had this kind of success. It also doesn't hurt me the same way that it did with some of these other guys that have gone on to more success that didn't realize that full potential here.
Does it hurt me? Did Charlie Brown still get hurt the 3rd or 4th time that he went to go kick the football and Lucy pulled it away? I feel dead inside now when former Cardinals have success. I don't really care at this point. It happens and I go, yeah, I expected that.
Even when they had success here, though, for like 6 years, like I do not feel this
Both
is
times
the
it
same.
hurts.
Okay.
Both times it hurts. Both times it hurts. I mean, Lane Thomas is hitting grand slams and taking the Guardians to the ALCS in the first place. I'm not over that yet exactly. So I mean, no, I think I and a lot of Cardinal fans at this point are just kind of dead inside about this.
I see both sides of this because, to your point, Rocchio, you're talking about the trend of former Cardinals going on and having success with other teams and doing really, really well. And to your point, BK, you're talking about seeing players like Adolis Garcia and Randy Rosarena where they didn't get a fair shot or a fair opportunity at the major league level for the Cardinals, and then you see them go on and it makes you question, wait, what did the Cardinals miss here where you didn't see this potential in these players?
Yeah, those hurt. Because in that scenario, that should have been happening here. Why didn't it happen here? What did they unlock that you were unable to? Tommy Edman, from 2019 to 2023, was an above-league average player for the Cardinals, did a lot of winning in a Cardinals uniform, filled every hole for this team that they needed him to, the way that he is now with the Dodgers, where, hey, you need him at second base one night, he's got that. You need him at shortstop one night, he's got that. You need him in center field, he can do that for you as well. He was doing all of those things here, hitting the same way here that he has so far in L.A. So this one, to me, feels very different. I'm just happy for Tommy Edman.
I am too.
Because he was a good Cardinal, and he's a guy that I can root for now that he's gone on to play for the Dodgers. This does not feel to me like many of the others have. The Cardinals have been kicked in the teeth time and time and time again with these LCS MVPs or World Series MVPs that have gone on to have so much success elsewhere. This one, to me, was very simple, and it was just I'm excited for Tommy Edman. I'm glad to see this.
Tommy Edman is such a great guy, too. Great player, but also
Absolutely.
a great guy off the field. He did a lot with big league impact, so I'm sure a lot of fans will be excited to cheer him on. So you have 3 homegrown talents when you're talking about Cardinals players, former Cardinals players who are going on to the World Series. You have Tommy Edman, you have Jack Flaherty, and you have Luke Weaver with the Yankees.
Yeah, and Jack Flaherty didn't have a great second start in the CS, but he did have a really good first one. He's expected to start game 1 for the Dodgers in the World Series. That one I feel like is maybe a little bit more on the... I don't know how Cardinals fans are feeling about Jack Flaherty. I saw a lot of people that were very happy to see him fail in that second start, which I don't really know what to make of that. He can't get away from any of these narratives that are surrounding him either. He's a guy that when he was here, everybody was talking about how, hey, Jack Flaherty just wants to get to LA. And now that he's in LA, people in LA are saying, well, does this one hurt worse because this is your hometown team? You failing, does that hurt worse because it's their hometown team? So it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in the World Series. We got a good one set up for us.
Yeah, you have the World Series, which will start on Friday between the Yankees and the Dodgers. As you mentioned, a really good weekend, especially if you're a college football fan, and especially if you're a Mizzou fan. Mizzou beating Auburn at home in a comeback victory, 21-17. This is the game that will be known as the Brady Cook game, because what he was able to do, BK, Cook returned mid-game from the hospital. He had an MRI, obviously dealing with some ankle issues there, and I think they were saying a high ankle sprain possibly for Brady Cook. I don't know if they were putting a label on it exactly just yet, but still dealing with an ankle injury, and he came back and led the team to a comeback victory over Auburn. What a huge game it was for the Tigers to come back, but also for Brady Cook when you're talking about his legacy and how people will remember him at Mizzou.
No doubt. And I would like to take you back into the BK memory bank, if you don't mind. So I was at Mizzou from 2011 to 2015. That was my college experience. My now wife and I, then girlfriend, went to our first football game together for Mizzou in 2013. It was a really good game. It was a fun game. It was an exciting game. And in the first half, it looked like Missouri was about to go on to beat South Carolina, and we'll see what happens the rest of the way. But at the time, it looked like it was going to be an 8-0 start to the season, and everybody was going to be excited about it. Where did this come from? Oh, my goodness, Mizzou. And then you called this the Brady Cook game. If you are a Missouri fan, you remember the Connor Shaw game. It felt very different than this one did. And Connor Shaw on that day became a legend for South Carolina fans. That was the moment that it all came together for him and for that fan base, and he will always be remembered because of what he did on that field in Columbia on that day.
Yeah.
This was that in reverse. Missouri finally had that moment, and I know that there has been a lot of controversy surrounding Brady Cook. Fans that were asking for Drew Pine. That's got to be the guy. How could he possibly be worse than what we're watching with Brady Cook? Did we all watch on Saturday? Did we all see the same thing?
Yeah, I saw that.
Please put that behind us now. Brady Cook is the guy. He earned his respect with what he was able to do in that game to finish that one out. 8 for 18, 147 yards after coming back from that ankle injury, scrambled for 9 yards and 14 yards, converted on 3rd and 7 with a run, 4th and 5 with a pass, 3rd and 10 with the pass on the final drive. That was as clutch as you're ever going to see from a Missouri quarterback. Could not be more happy for him. He has gone through a ton physically, mentally, emotionally, adversity-wise. That was awesome. Watching that, I just couldn't help but feel great for that kid, man.
Yeah, he really needed that, especially with everything that we talked about from the season. And look, I want to point out, I think that some of the criticism has been fair for Brady Cook. I think there's been a lot of people who say, yes, I've even mentioned the lack of explosive plays that you have seen from this team offensively. I expect to go in this year more of that, especially with the wide receiver room that he has available to him. But it seems like maybe he's been dealing with an injury throughout this entire season, and then you had everything culminate to what we saw at the beginning of that game where he was dealing with that ankle injury. And for him to come back in that way, what he was saying in the post-game comments, the emotion that he had afterwards, he willed that victory for Mizzou.
Yeah, let's hear from him on why this game was emotional for him. He talked about this a little bit post-game. I thought some of the comments from Brady Cook were really impressive.
I am emotional. I am. Mizzou means so much to me. The first 6 games, you know, they haven't gone the way I wish they would have in a lot of ways. And to come out here the first drive and get hurt and to be down, to think I'm not going to come back in the game and then find a way. And we just manifested. We get it done. We fight, and we win. It's just, I'm emotional right now.
One more from Brady Cook on fighting through adversity and why this one meant so much.
You know, shout out to our trainers. But I've played through stuff before. I've been through adversity before, physically, emotionally, mentally. This isn't anything new. It's just another step.
What did you learn about your team today?
I learned that we're going to fight. I learned that my energy, my leadership means something to them. I learned that for sure when I came out in the third quarter. And I learned that they're always going to fight.
I don't know what this game is going to mean for Missouri. It will depend on what happens the next 5 weeks, Brooke. Because if we look back on this and they lose against Auburn and they don't end up taking care of business against South Carolina or Arkansas, this will just be a footnote. And you look back on it and say, hey, remember when Brady Cook had that awesome comeback against Auburn? But if they do this year what they did last year and it becomes the catalyst for a team that somehow needed that specific moment, we'll look back on that and say, man, Brady Cook is the one that willed that team to where it wanted to go. Because last year, I think we talked about this another time that I was in on a Monday, Brooke. This was a team that had a lot of close calls, man. Mm-hmm. That game against Kansas State easily could have gone in the other direction if they missed that kick at the end. The game against Kentucky, they came out completely flat, needed a fourth down fake punt to be able to come back in that one. The game against Florida, they needed to convert on fourth, and I think it was 17 to Luther Burden across the middle. I was in the stands for that one. They had some close calls that went their direction that ended up allowing for that to be a special season that we all remember it as. This season, they've had some close calls as well. Brady Cook has come up clutch. He's not perfect. You're right, Brooke. He deserves a lot of the criticism. What I didn't love was the way that Mizzou fans almost were rooting against him at times. That way they could see the other guy. I hope that we can put that to the side now, and now we can all just agree. Brady Cook is your quarterback. Let's see where this thing goes with him.
Exactly. I think it answered a lot of questions about who should be your quarterback moving forward. And hopefully everything will be fine with the ankle, including this weekend when we're talking about college football. For those who love ranking watching, and somebody just texted this into the text line, Illinois moved up 2 spots in the AP Top 25, deservingly so, because Illinois, a lot of people thought, BK, that they were crazy for scheduling Michigan for their season. But they were able to beat them, beating the defending national champions 21-7. Brett Bielema, what he's been able to build over there at Illinois, I know that we've talked about this before with UN. He deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to build over there.
This is not the program that I remember from my childhood watching the Illini. They had a couple of good years there in the early 2000s where them and Mizzou were both kind of on the up and up. But beyond that, this has been a program that has really struggled to find its footing. And I want to listen to a little bit about what Brett Bielema had to say after this game, if you don't mind. He was asked about, hey, this is a program that hasn't had a lot of success. What's it like for you to be 6-1 for the second time in the last 3 years? And I love Brett Bielema's answer. Let's take a listen.
I have heard so many things about things we've never done, right? I'd rather talk about things we've done. And I get it. I understand it. But I think that there's one of my biggest challenges or pet peeves that I've had during my 4 years here, right? Is just leave the past in the past, right? Let's move forward. And I get it, right? I want that to be the standard, right? That should be the norm. We had a crowd that affected the game, right? And to have as a head coach to know that moment, and more importantly that our opponents felt that was a huge, huge deal.
Think about some of the wins that they now have on their resume over the last couple of years. They had that big one in Penn State. Now you've got this one against Michigan. You had the win against Nebraska earlier this year on the road. The next one that's up on the schedule is Oregon. This ain't going to be easy, but even if you lose against Oregon, this team has a real chance to go 10-2. I don't think that gets you into the college football playoff. Man, that's a hell of a resume to be able to have. And if you go 10-2 at Illinois, it's one of the best seasons in program history. I think it is time to give Brett Bielema his fair due. This guy's one hell of a football coach. It's not perfect. It's not the sexiest style of football, but he's going to have a hell of a defense. He's going to build through the line of scrimmage. You're going to have a good running game. And he just out-Michiganed Michigan.
Yeah.
Good for you, Brett Bielema. That was one hell of a win.
Yeah, especially, too, when you looked at the game. If you would have told me that their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, would have only passed for 80 yards on 18 pass attempts, I would have said, well, there's no way that Illinois Illinois is going to win that game against Michigan, the defending national champs. There's no way. But Illinois won, to your point, BK, in the trenches, which is very much Brett Bielema, his style of football. And to see that actually implemented and working for him, I'm happy for him, because I definitely saw the bad part when he was in Arkansas. I thought it was absolutely crazy when he left Wisconsin to go to Arkansas, because that's such a tough program to go into, and especially when you looked at the SEC West at that time. But for him to have success now over at Illinois and to really just build this program brick by brick, you can see it really paying off for him.
Yeah, you can see what he wanted to build, and you can also see what it's like for a lot of these coaches. And this is why I would always say the grass is not always greener. When you go to a program like Illinois, where they're going to appreciate the 9 and 10 win seasons, and not Arkansas, where if you go 9 and 3, they're always going to say, well, what's the next step? How are you going to get to 11 and 1? How are you going to get to 12 and 0? Well, it's not necessarily realistic at that program. You're not going to be able to do that on a consistent basis. Illinois fans, if Brett Bielema builds this stable 8-win every year, occasionally you get to 10, he'll get a statue outside of the stadium, because that's what Gary Pinkel did at Missouri. And it reminds me a lot. What you just heard there, that quote from Bielema a little bit ago, that reminds me so much of the things that Gary Pinkel would say early in his tenure, where he's like, hey, listen, yeah, I understand that this program hasn't had the success that a lot of people would like for it to. I don't want to talk about that anymore. We are having success now, and that's what this program's going to be moving forward. There are a lot of similarities between what Gary Pinkel built at Mizzou and what Brett Bielema is trying to build right now at Illinois.
And we will have Brett Bielema on Wednesday on the opening drive, so we'll be able to talk to him about everything that he's been able to do there. As I mentioned, with the AP Top 25, Illinois bumped up 2 spots to number 20, while Mizzou was knocked down 2 spots at number 21, and we'll discuss that throughout the show today. And the Blues with, yes?
I got to give a shout out to Kerry Davis, because for week 1 of the season, he made a comment in the back office between shows about, at some point in this season, Mizzou and Illinois are going to be ships passing each other in the night on the rankings. And I scoffed. And that Nostradamus
To be fair, they shouldn't have been.
And then you're correct. But that Nostradamus SOB, who I love, and please don't hit me in the hallways. How dare you call that one? He's correct, and I hate him for it. And I hope he never has something good happen for him ever again.
Oh my God! Whoa! What about last line there?
I'm kidding. Of course. ILL, I hope they beat Oregon. It would be fantastic if we have the Illini in the college football playoff. At this point, considering Mizzou's not getting to that point.
Whoa, wait, let's relax.
Come on now.
Everything is very much on the table for Mizzou.
Let's go with the Illini being the college football playoff team from the St. Louis area.
Let's have both of them meet in Columbia for a college football playoff game.
I mean, let's talk about that later.
Here we go.
Yes, we do need to talk about that later. So we will discuss about the rankings, which I say, by the way, do not matter whatsoever, because they're absolutely crazy if you look at it. But also this weekend, the Blues with a 4-3 win over the Canes at home. Those offer sheets are looking really good, and we'll discuss that. But coming up next, we have our 3 things that we love from the weekend. That's next here on 101 ESPN. Brooke, BK, and Rocco here, and it is time for 3 things that we love from the weekend. BK, why don't you
Number 3.
All right, let's start out with number 3 for me, and that is the biggest moment in the ALCS, the biggest moment in his Yankees career. Juan Soto coming through in the clutch.
Got a steal. Soto, a high fly ball to center. Thomas backing up. Thomas at the track. And Juan Soto! A 3-run home run! Soto magic in Game 5!
Greg Amsinger called it the greatest at-bat he has ever seen in his life. Fouled off 5 consecutive pitches as he ends up getting the pitch that he was looking for. He was timing up the Yankees pitcher, and he found it. He ended up hitting that mistake a long, long way. 117 miles an hour off the bat. Juan Soto homers to center to give the Yankees the lead and ultimately the win to go to the World Series. It's not often, Brooke, that a trade, a signing, a transaction ends up becoming everything you could have asked for and then some. But that is what this has been for the New York Yankees. I don't know what Juan Soto's next contract is going to be, and I don't know where it is going to be. I would assume it's with the Yankees. It's possible it's with the Mets. Who knows? Maybe the Dodgers say, let's get real frisky if they lose in this series. Let's get Juan Soto here along with the rest of our unbelievable lineup. But for the Yankees, this is already a win. First time in 15 years that you're back here in the Winter Classic. What a signing. What a hit. What a home run. What a moment for Juan Soto. He has been everything they could have asked for and then some.
Yeah, he really has been. And he looks like a Yankee. You know, he looks like he fits in there. So when you're talking about the contract he'll possibly get, I know there's a lot of people speculating, MLB insiders, saying $600 million, something like that, maybe even $700 million. Does that seem out of the question, or do you think that he will be
Feels
worth
like a lot. I can't imagine he ends up getting more than what Shohei Ohtani did. I think offensively, as we've seen this year, similar in terms of the overall production. Juan Soto doesn't come with the ability to, pitch. So I would...
There's that.
He's not crazy athletic. He's not a guy that you expect to be in right field for the rest of his career. He doesn't really add value on the bases. He's one of the best hitters we've ever seen. He's one of the most patient hitters that we've ever seen. $700 million seems pretty wild to me. He's incredibly young, so he's hitting the market at the exact right time. He's only 25 years old. He'll be 26 next season.
Does that seem crazy to you that he's only 25 years old?
It's similar to the Bryce Harper thing. Harper hit the market at 26 years old, got a 13-year contract. Maybe you see something similar here, and that's how you get up to 600 plus.
So we're not even seeing possibly his prime here. Is when you're hearing 25,
his prime now.
yeah, is $600 million. I think that would be not shocking if he's offered that. So number 3 for me will be that it was another crazy weekend in college football. And BK, I love it. Honestly, I'm enjoying college football more this year than I'm enjoying the NFL. And I'm a huge NFL fan, but the college football scene is just absolutely nuts. I think the motto this year for college football should be embrace the chaos. That should be their motto this year, because you had a crazy weekend in Mizzou with their comeback win over Auburn. And we talked about Brady Cook, everything he was able to do. Illinois beating Michigan, which was fantastic. And how the mighty have fallen. Tennessee taking down Alabama. This is a different Alabama team, obviously, than we've seen in the Nick Saban era. And Georgia handing Texas their first loss of the season. I'm enjoying every single aspect of it.
There is no undefeated team in the SEC at this point in the season for the first time since, you guessed it, 2007. 2007 is the last time that we saw a college football season like this. The number 2 ranked team in the country, 7 weeks in, has a loss. That is not something you would anticipate seeing in most seasons, and it is why in the last segment when Rocc said, oh, well, Mizzou's done. No, they're very much not. Mizzou has everything on the table, and it's not just because of what they've done. In fact, it has very little to do with what they've done. It has everything to do with what has happened around them. College football chaos is the correct word for it, Brooke. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. They could not have asked for a better season to have the expansion of the college football playoff.
Number 2.
My number 2 thing from the weekend is watching the Green Bay Packers right now is one of my favorite things to do. Jordan Love is an absolute magician. This throw was the single best throw that I saw this weekend.
Here's Love to the end zone. Diving catch. What a catch it is by Kraft for the score.
That was the touchdown back of the end zone, threading the needle through 2 defenders. Jordan Love's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. That game was amazing because I love watching both of those quarterbacks, although CJ Stroud, what are we doing, buddy? 85 yards in the game. There's some questions to be answered with the Texan side of things. I digress. We'll get to that later on. Jordan Love is amazing. To do this at this point in his career, I think the Packers today are the favorite to come out of the NFC. I believe them to be the best team in the NFC, and I think they're just starting to hit their stride. You're starting to see the receivers kind of flow into place. Tucker Kraft is becoming a bigger and bigger portion of their offense. The Josh Jacobs signing is starting to pay dividends now. I think the defense is starting to come together a little bit better. The Packers, to me, as of today, the best team in the NFC, the favorite to come out of the NFC. Jordan Love is a huge part of that.
I think the Detroit Lions would like to have a word, BK.
For sure. The NFC North, you could claim any of the three, and I would understand it.
Yeah, that is such a good. And the NFC North is just crazy this year, and I know we'll get into that later in the show. But number 2 for me will be the Blues picking up a 4-3 win over the Canes, and specifically, I know there was a lot to like about this game, but I want to point to the Joseph brothers because I have a soft spot for family moments, and so I don't know if you saw, you had P.O. Joseph assisting his brother Matthew Joseph on his second goal of the season, and their parents were in the stands watching. I love the interviews that Andy Strickland did with them. It was just so sweet to see. This is the first time that they played on an NHL team together. I really love the energy that the Joseph brothers bring to this team.
They bring a lot of energy. They also bring quality.
Yeah.
Those guys have been really good for the Blues. The last couple of games from P.O. Joseph have been impressive. And Matthew Joseph is one of my favorite players on this team. He plays the exact style that they were missing last year.
Exactly.
Such a prototypical third-line winger on a contender. I don't know if that's what the Blues are going to be for sure, but they've got him for the next 2 years at a totally reasonable rate. It's a good move. Doug Armstrong had one hell of an offseason.
Yeah.
All right, number 1.
Number 1.
Brooke, I get in trouble because, for those of you that aren't aware, I'm from Kansas City. And so I haven't watched...
No way.
I know.
You are?
I haven't watched a lot of winning baseball in my life. And so therefore, I bring some of that baggage to the table when I talk about the Cardinals. Now, Cardinals are going in a different direction, and that's reasonable. But I think sometimes we underestimate just how fun it is for your team to find a way to get into the playoffs, and let's see what happens from there. I thought Howie Rose on the New York Mets broadcast yesterday, as they are getting ready to be pushed out of the postseason, summed it up beautifully as to what that kind of a run can mean for a fan base. Let's take a listen.
If you are emotionally invested in this Mets team and you're sad right now, it's certainly understandable. But I promise you that won't take long to wear off if it ends here. Because once the immediate disappointment, if they don't pull off some kind of magical comeback here, wears off, you'll realize what an incredible ride this team took you for this year. Started out 0-5. They showed some signs of life before they fell to 11 games under the 500 mark. And a lot of people had them written off right there. When you're lying around during the offseason, anticipating the next one, and you think about what the 2024 Mets were all about, you won't be able to keep yourself from smiling. Remember the talk over the winter? Transitional year. They're punting on the season. Well, they've kicked all the way to the 6th game of the National League Championship Series.
That audio courtesy of the Mets Radio Network. You look at their rotation. Manaea, Severino, Quintana. Those are 3 guys that we've talked about for the Cardinals in recent seasons. The Cardinals fans would have been happy with as number 3 or number 4 or number 5 starters. You look at their lineup, it's really good. They've got a star in it with Francisco Lindor. They also have a lot of young talent that has started to emerge there. You look at what they did this season. They didn't get to 90 wins, but they came from a place where there weren't expectations, and the Cardinals might be entering a similar spot going into next season. I don't know what next year is going to hold for the Cardinals. I don't know if they have any chance of reaching the postseason. They might just say, you know what, let's tear this thing down to the studs. I don't know. But what I will tell you is there is no better place, no more exciting place to be as a fan than coming from a place of no expectations and not only realizing, oh boy, this team has a real chance to do something special, but then getting all the way to Game 6 of the NLCS against the LA Dodgers and having a real chance to be able to do something special there. That is what sports are all about, and that is why I still put value on getting into the postseason, even when you think your team has no chance to do anything special. Nobody thought that Mets team was going to do anything this year, nor should you have, because they didn't have the team that you would have expected to go far into the postseason. but they were able to. They put together one hell of a run. Mets fans are going to remember this fondly, and hopefully it leads to something bigger and better for them, just as hopefully the Cardinals get to see something bigger and better in the future.
Yeah, I know that you're right about what you're saying about the expectations not necessarily being there, but payroll-wise, the expectation is that they should have made it this far, if not further, because they were top in all of Major League Baseball this season in payroll.
Wasn't on the team, though. They were paying like $90 million.
I know, but when you're spending like that much money, I think the expectation's always high.
Spent that much money for those guys to pitch for different teams. Like
Yeah.
Max Scherzer pitching for a different team. Justin Verlander pitching for a different team. They basically paid for prospects. I hear you, but I think we all agree coming into the season. I mean, Howie Rose just said it. It was considered to be a transition year. I think they more than exceeded expectations this year.
There was good stories there, too. As you mentioned, Francisco Lindor, what he was able to do, especially in the second half. Grimace, the OMG song, too, that was like their anthem that they had. A lot of interesting stories for the Mets. So my number one for this weekend would be the Brady Cook game. Mizzou beating Auburn. Brady Cook, he really cemented his legacy this weekend by going to the hospital, coming back, and orchestrating that comeback victory over Auburn. And look, he deserves all the credit in the world for fighting and willing that victory for Mizzou. The emotional post-game comments afterwards, you can tell how much he cares about this school, about this university, and how much blood, sweat, and tears, and how much he has physically also used his body and even his mind to get Mizzou to this point. He deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do and for what he did in that game.
No doubt. He deserves all the credit in the world, all the respect in the world for what he was able to do on Saturday, and now he gets to keep proving it. Like, that's the thing about college football is you can't just have it be one comeback against Auburn on a random Saturday. Now you got to follow that up with a big win against Alabama on an ankle that is hobbled for the entirety of this game. It's not going to be an easy encore for Brady Cook on Saturday.
That's BK and Brooke, and that was the three things we love from this weekend. Coming up next, Philip Broberg is exactly what the doctor ordered for this Blues team. What is the biggest change that you've noticed from last year to this year? That's coming up next year on The Opening Drive.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Big weekend for your local college football teams as the Fighting Illini get a big win over their rivals in Michigan, a 21-7 win over, at the time, number 24 ranked Michigan Wolverines, and Missouri legs one out against Auburn, number 19 Mizzou over the Auburn Tigers, 21-17. Also over the weekend, the Blues got a win on Saturday, 4-3 over the Hurricanes. They will be back in action tomorrow, facing off against the Jets. Of course, you can catch that game right here on 101 ESPN, your home for the St. Louis Blues. And St. Louis City SC wrapped up their season with a disappointing 4-1 loss to Minnesota United, but it wasn't all bad for soccer in St. Louis over the weekend as St. Louis City 2 won their playoff game last night at City Park 2-1 with a goal in stoppage time to move on to the next round. That is your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Out to Matthew Joseph, who skates ahead to Dylan Holloway. Enters the zone, leaves it for Broberg. Takes it down along the wing, drags into the middle. Down low, they shoot, they score! What a play between the legs of Holloway to flip it over the goalie on a terrific driving assist from Broberg. 3-1 St. Louis.
Brooke, BK, and Rocco here, and you just heard Dylan Holloway's first goal of the season, and none other than Philip Broberg was the one who had the assist on that goal for Dylan Holloway. And Philip Broberg is exactly what the doctor ordered for this Blues team. He has been excellent this season, and those offer sheets, BK, are looking really good right now. Broberg, by the way, extending his season-opening point streak to 6 games, a franchise record for a defenseman to begin his Blues career with that assist on Dylan Holloway's goal. Philip Broberg just continues to be a highlight for me in this Blues team.
I didn't see this coming. I know that there were a lot of Blues fans that were higher on Broberg than I was. I didn't know what to expect considering how young he is, how inexperienced he is at this level. I said on our show with Alex, and I got a lot of pushback, and now it's very much deserved. I thought there was a chance that he ends up being actually worse this year than Torrey Krug was last year. Not because I didn't think he was going to be a good player, but he's so young, and so you expect to see some, youthful and experience show up. And when you're a defenseman and you see some of those moments, those tend to lead to goals going in the back of the net, which is worse than what you would expect from a guy with as much experience as Torrey Krug. Well, I was very wrong. I'm already ready to admit that. He has already been through 6 games, so much more than I could have possibly anticipated. We knew he was big. We knew he could skate. We knew he could move the puck, but he hadn't shown it a lot at the NHL level just yet. Dude, this guy has a feel for the game that I was unprepared for. He's gritty, but he's not going out there just looking for hits just because he can. He's a guy that some of the best plays that I've seen from him so far this year, remember a couple of games ago, there's just a totally milquetoast play going into the neutral zone, right? Where he just shuts it down. Guy's trying to skate through the neutral zone. He stands him up, ends up forcing a turnover. They get the puck going the other direction. Those are just the little plays that the Blues have been missing from their defensemen for 3 years now. Basically, since that 2022 team, they just haven't been able to shut plays down the way that Philip Broberg has thus far. That pairing between he and Justin Falk has been the Blues' best defensive pairing so far this season. He has been everything they could have asked for and then some. And the fact that he's 23 years old with long-term club control, only 2 years on his contract, but then you've got RFA status to where they can sign him long-term. Man, I can't imagine there are many moves that Doug Armstrong has made in his NHL career that will go down as being better given the circumstances than this one for Philip Broberg.
Yeah, we had Joey V on Friday, and he had mentioned that he thinks this is the greatest move since bringing in Ryan O'Reilly, which, of course, Ryan O'Reilly, led to the Blues winning the Stanley Cup. But when you're talking about the long-term effect that Broberg will bring to this team at just 23 years old, and he's already making this much of an impact, and I get that it's still early on in the season, but really, you can notice the huge difference that he's brought. Also, I think we're benefiting from a healthy Justin Falk. He was obviously dealing with injuries last season, so now you're seeing this pairing really work out. By the way, he is human. He was on the ice for a goal against for that power play goal in the third period, but that was the first goal against for Broberg this season, and just showing how big of a difference that he's made. A lot of these young guys that they brought in, Doug Armstrong, I think one of the reasons why he has garnered so much respect in St. Louis is because when he says something, he clearly lays out the vision, and then he has the actions to back it up, right? Because you remember, he admitted that what they had done in the past, some of the moves did not lead to what they were expecting. So then he had this vision that he laid out of making sure to acquire players who were under 30 years old. And look at all the moves that he's made, BK, leading up to this, to bring in those young players who are right in that age range and are already impacting this team.
Yeah, and some of them aren't going to work out. Like, he brought in Jakub Vrana, he brought in Kasperi Kapanen. I would say those moves, for what he wanted out of them, didn't really work out. But it's about the upside. It's about, if they do work out, what do I get here? And with Jakub Vrana, for example, if it worked out, he was a potential 30-goal scorer for the St. Louis Blues. And that means so much more than the few $1 million that you lose if it doesn't end up working out. The same thing was true here. If it worked with Philip Broberg, okay, well, we've got a top 4 defenseman that's 23 years old, has size, has puck movement ability, and really great skating ability. If it doesn't, okay, so we're out a second-round pick. Cool. Like, half of the second-round picks never make it to the NHL level. I'm already guaranteed this guy's at the NHL level, and I've already guaranteed that at a minimum, he's like a capable third-pair defenseman that can potentially help you for a couple of years as a slightly overpaid third-pair defenseman. The downside is nothing, basically. The upside is everything that the Blues have been lacking, and that's what I love so much about this specific move, is that the Blues needed a top 4 defenseman. And they have been trying to find the guy ever since Alex Pietrangelo left via free agency. They go out and get Justin Falk. I know that was a little before Petro left, but going down this timeline, Petro, Torrey Krug, Nick Leddy, they've been throwing assets at this over the last couple of seasons, and finally it appears one of them is going to stick. That's what I respect about Doug Armstrong maybe the most, is that he is unafraid to admit mistakes, and he is unafraid to keep throwing assets at what he deems to be his biggest issue. It's something that I get frustrated about with the Cardinals at times, where they're like, okay, well, we threw as many things at this as we can, threw all of this at the wall. We'll see what sticks with the rotation. Yeah, but did you actually get the quality that you need? No. The Blues take a very different path, and they try to find everything they need and then some, and then keep throwing assets at it until you actually solve the problem that is in front of you.
It's the forward thinking. It's having the plan and also sticking to it and having that full vision. I think that's the biggest difference. So when you're looking at last year's team and this year's team, what is the biggest change that you feel like you've noticed? For me, I'm going to go back to this young core. There just feels like a re-energized group, and you can really see this young core forming. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs this year or not, of course, because it's so early into the season. But when I'm looking at the future aspect of this, I can see how this can really all come together with this young core.
Yeah, to me, it's the ability to come back. And I'm not even just talking about, like, hey, they get down by multiple goals in the first couple of games of the season. They find a way to come back in those games individually. But even in this game against Carolina, you look at it and the way that this thing started off, dude, that was not a good first period by the Blues. And they have found ways to put that behind them and to fix whatever it is that is broken. And in that first period, it appeared that there was a lot going wrong that was broken for them. They were outshot 15-4 to start things off in this game at 5-on-5 alone. Then they find a way, coming out of the break, to just fix it. Just say, okay, that's behind us. Let's go out there. Let's play our game. And that sounds so simple and so reductive in terms of the breakdown of the game. But that's what this team was missing over the last couple of seasons. There would be times where if they didn't find their game in the first 20 minutes, you knew it was over. I don't have to watch the rest of this thing.
Yeah.
They're done. They're just not going to be able to rebound from that. And this year it feels very different. I think it goes back to some of what you said about the new depth, the new voices, the fresh perspectives that are inside of that dressing room. It just feels like a very different team going into this season. So that, to me, is the biggest change, is they have the ability to bounce back despite some of the adversity that they've been facing.
That's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we have Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. Take It or Leave It is coming up next here on the Opening Drive.
it or leave it.
Want to say something? Put it out there. If you like it, you can take it. If you don't, set it right back.
Get your text into 314-399-9646 and give us your take it or leave it.
Brought to you by Gloria Lou Realty. Visit GloriaHasTheBuyers.com and start packing.
That's my final offer. Take it or leave it.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BK here and Matthew Rocchio, and it's time for Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399-YO-HO. I'm looking at you, BK.
Get things started?
Eventually, I will pressure you into this. This is a goal of mine to get you to do the yo-ho.
Do you want to start, or would you like me to?
I'll start. Fine.
Let's do it.
Take it or leave it. I'll get BK to do a yo-ho one day.
Leave that. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that one.
You're saying BK's stubborn, Rocchio? Is that what you're saying here?
No. That's definitely not true.
There's another word for it, but I don't have it off the tip of my tongue right now. There's an extreme for stubborn. I just don't have the word.
There
for
we
it.
go. Take it or leave it. The San Francisco 49ers will miss the postseason this year.
Ooh, miss the postseason.
Miss the playoffs entirely. They're 3-4. They have losses now against the Vikings, the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Chiefs. Take it or leave it. They will miss the playoffs coming up. They have Dallas, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Green Bay, and Buffalo over their next 5. It sounds like Brandon Ayuk is likely to miss the rest of the season with a potential torn ACL, by the way.
I will take it. It seems like there's a lot going on, especially when you talk about the injuries with Ayuk and now Christian McCaffrey, too. It seems like this is a very different 49ers team.
My only issue with it is I don't know what any other team in the NFC West is.
Yep.
And so that's why it's a complete toss up, because even when the Seattle Seahawks look like pretty solid through the first 4 weeks, Geno Smith's one of the leader in pretty much every passing category in the NFL, and they've kind of stunk the last 2 weeks. And obviously the Cardinals have zero consistency game to game, week to week, play to play, quarter to quarter, frankly.
Rams still alive technically.
And the Rams are still alive, and Sean McVay, anytime he has weapons and they get a little health, he could work to a 3 out of 4 game winning streak, and that changes the standing. So I'm leaving it now only because I just don't know what the heck the division is. It's kind of like the NFC East.
That's where I'm at as well. I'm going to leave it for now. I can't believe I'm saying this. Still believe in Brock Purdy. Weird game for him yesterday.
It was
Did
a weird
not
game.
play well
I don't
at
know
all.
what to believe with him. Every other week, I'm down on him, and then he proves me wrong, and then I try to mea culpa, and then he sucks, and then it happens all over again.
It's very simple. Is he playing against Brian Flores or Steve Spagnuolo? If yes, he's going to look bad. If no, you like what you see out of Brock Purdy. Now, I do think the weapons being as hurt as they are this year is going to be a problem for him.
Yes.
Brandon Ayuk hasn't been himself all season long, and now he's potentially going to miss the rest of the year. Deebo Samuel has not been healthy, was not healthy yesterday, had a weird illness that they didn't report. If you started him in fantasy, I apologize. Man, that sucks for you. And then you see no Christian McCaffrey, and we have no idea if or when he's going to be back. So the weapons are a problem. I still think they're the best team in the NFC West, though, despite what the record indicates and despite how much they have struggled so far this year. So I'll leave it, but it ain't looking good in San Francisco right now.
No, it's not. Okay, I'll give you my real take it or leave it for today. Take it or leave it. Mizzou will beat Alabama, but there's a but here. It really won't matter as much in the national perspective because people are already down on Alabama this year.
I'll take it, but if they beat Alabama and take care of business the rest of the way, they're still going to make the college football playoff. So I don't care how people see these anymore. I guess I'm alone in this regard. I don't care that they dropped in the polls this week. I see a lot of Mizzou fans complain. Dude, take care of business. Just take care of business. If you keep winning, everything will take care of itself. You're a top 25 team in the country. That's what matters at this point in the season. You got your butts whipped by Texas A&M. It's going to take a while for the stink of that game to wash off. If you go on the road at Alabama and take care of business against that team, which is still good but not great, you're going to get your respect over due time. You just have to keep on winning.
Heather Dinich on our podcast the other week pretty much said that the AP poll it will not be taken into account by the College Football Playoff Committee.
Nor should it.
So, and nor should it. So it's all we're doing essentially is we're just having a little party for these first 10 weeks among ourselves and arguing and throwing food at each other. And the higher ups who actually make the decisions aren't paying any bit of attention to it.
I think Mizzou's like a top 18-ish team. The problem is, and Brooke, this is where I do give a little credence to the voters. Where do you want them? Do you want them at 19? Do you want them at 17? Because you're not putting them in front of Indiana, which is 13. You're not putting them in front of Texas A&M, which is 14, because they absolutely destroyed you on the same field.
Ole Miss, maybe? Because Ole Miss is a 2-loss team already this season.
Sure, but the losses have been against really quality opponents for the most part, and their resume might be a little better than yours. So I don't know. I think it's right around that range. Like 17 to 21 feels like the correct range for both Illinois and Mizzou. I don't really care where you put them at right now. Just have them in the right place, top 12 by the end of the season. I'm good.
There you go. All right, what do we have on the text line, Rocc?
Take it, a very important topic here. Take it or leave it. Brownies superior to chocolate chip cookies.
Ooh.
I prefer cookies, personally.
I mean, obviously, here's the thing. I mean,
but brownies have more chocolate in them.
Here's the thing. Brownies have less variance. Which is like most
it's gooey middle.
That's what like it's rare that you're going to get like a rock hard brownie. There's a lot you're going to sometimes get. You're going to sometimes get a not soft chocolate chip cookie
Have you
as
been to a
opposed
bake
to a
sale?
super soft chocolate chip cookie. I just feel like I'm not saying there's no variance in brownie. I feel like there's less variance in brownies. And trust, I feel like the microwave will solve a bad brownie more than it solves a bad cookie.
I don't know. If you have,
yes, great point.
But if you had a really, really good brownie, you remember that brownie for a long time. So I might take it. I love chocolate chip cookies, but a really good brownie trumps them.
That's okay. I'll take it. Take it or leave it. Indiana wins the Big Ten.
I'm going to leave it. I think Oregon's the best team in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Oregon's the best team in the country. I think Ohio State is the second best team in the country. And if you wanted to make a case that Penn State is the third best team in the country, I could hear you. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be a really tough road for them.
I can't wait to see that Illinois-Oregon game.
Wait, who's your number 2?
I would have Ohio State number 2.
And then your number 3 would be Penn State.
Penn State, potentially, yeah.
I'm still putting Texas number 3. Take it or leave it. Edman versus Wong debate is one-sided now. I didn't realize it was a debate.
I think they made the right move when they made it, and both had really good Cardinals careers. I'm not really sure what the debate is, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed watching both play for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I did too.
God, just give me some vitriol. Come on,
I wish I had a better take for you here. I just don't really know.
Yell about him getting picked off in the World. Yell about him getting picked off in the World Series again. Come on, BK.
I don't know what the argument is, and so therefore I don't really know what the terms of the argument are, and it's hard for me to argue one side versus the other.
Oh, we got another edition of There's a Sociopath on our text line. I love these.
Okay.
Take it or leave it. Crunchy cookies are better than soft, gooey cookies.
Leave it.
Leave it.
Leave it.
FBI, the number is 636.
Blast their entire number there. Yeah.
Take it or leave it. If you didn't start it right in July when the trade went through, then you're whining on X about how the Cardinals just let another one go in Tommy Edman. It means nothing.
I got to say, this one annoyed me. It was a good trade. They made a good trade. It helped their team. It didn't end up working out for them. It did work out very much for the Dodgers. You know who it really didn't work out for is the White Sox, and who could have seen that one coming? This was a smart move by the Cardinals at the time that they made it. Tommy Edman was a center fielder that didn't hit a ton, and you already had some of those. You really needed a starting pitcher. I understood it. I thought it was a really smart move then. I still think it's a really smart move now. And it's worked out brilliantly for the Dodgers, and we all saw that that was a likely potential for this. So.
I still hate to see it, though. I am happy for Tommy Edman, but you just wish that it would have worked out here in St. Louis, especially when you're talking about towards the end here where he was dealing with that injury. You didn't get to see him, obviously, close out his career with the Cardinals and everything he was able to do. It's just that Tommy Edman, you can tell his baseball IQ and his willingness and ability to, you could put him anywhere, basically, and he was able to succeed. But you're right, it just felt like there was no role available for him. But that seems to be the story for the Cardinals, right, is that they don't have a role available for a player, and then they go on and they find that role elsewhere and succeed.
Yeah, I mean, this was one that I don't feel as bad about, though, because you had real answers at each of the spots that he was potentially going to fill for you. I mean, I'm not starting him at shortstop over Mason Wynn. I'm not starting him at second base, potentially over Brendan Donovan. You could have started him in center field if you wanted to. I'm not so sure he wanted to play in center field long term.
He's hitting cleanup for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and he's playing shortstop for them. He's mostly been on the infield for the Dodgers this year. So I do wonder if that's part of what played into this as well.
Yeah, and it was an opportunity that opened up because of Freeman's injury.
Exactly.
You have one more, Rocc?
No, that's all I got.
Oh, okay. Well, that was Take It or Leave It. Coming up next, the Brady Cook game. We were talking about it earlier, but did Brady Cook just put an end to all questions about him being Mizzou's #1 quarterback? We'll discuss that coming up next here on the Opening Drive.
perspective on the day's top stories. It's the Opening Drive's Fresh Take.
Cook over the middle, pulled in first down at the 40-yard line. Mookie Cooper inside the 30, Cooper inside the 20, stumbling, keeping his feet, and finally tackled inside the 5. Cook backing up, looking, lobbing, first down, Burton. The go-to guy comes up huge. They'll run it again straight ahead, bouncing off of a tackle. There's Roberts into the end zone. Touchdown, Missouri.
Welcome back to the Opening Drive. Brooke BK and Matthew Rocchio here. And our fresh take today, Brady Cook just put an end to all questions about him being Mizzou's starting quarterback because, as you just listened to there, Mizzou was able to orchestrate a comeback victory over Auburn this past weekend. And the story of the game was Brady Cook because he was injured early in the game. He came back in the third quarter, and what you listened there at the beginning was Auburn was leading 17-6, BK. And then Cook hit Mookie Cooper with a 78-yard pass, which set up for that touchdown by Carroll. That was, to me, just like a storybook moment where you knew that Brady Cook, he was struggling, obviously dealing with that ankle injury. And then for him to actually go to the hospital, which was revealed after the game, get an MRI, come back and orchestrate that comeback for Mizzou, it's the Brady Cook game for me. And it also ended all doubts that he should be the quarterback for Mizzou, which kind of sounds crazy that we're even talking about that. But we've discussed this. A lot of people have pointed out maybe, hey, let's give Drew Pine a look, right? Let's see what he looks like. When you saw him this weekend, you see why Brady Cook is the answer for Mizzou as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I'm curious. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. What is the comparison for what we've seen from Brady Cook at Mizzou? Because you think back, and I almost feel like you have to go back in time to be able to understand better where we are today. You go back to the 2021 season. Connor Bazelak is Missouri's quarterback, and he was not good that year. It was a really bad season for him. I immediately go back to that Boston College game where he throws the interception late. They end up losing that one on the road at BC. That was kind of the low point of that year for me. And later on that year, Bazelak is not healthy. So they go into the game against Georgia, which is like the worst possible spot for a backup to enter the game. They decide to split the reps between Brady Cook and Tyler Macon. Tyler Macon was the 4-star quarterback from East St. Louis that a lot of Missouri fans, especially locally, wanted to see as the next starter at Mizzou. Brady Cook was a little more unheralded as a recruit. There were a lot of people that watched him in high school. They were like, I don't even know if this is a Power 5 guy at the next level. And it ends up that Brady Cook is the one that the coaching staff believed in more heading into 2022. So we spent 2022 talking about Cook versus Tyler Macon. And then last year you see Sam Horn come in and people are like, okay, well, this is the next guy. And at every turn, oh, and I didn't even mention the entire offseason when Jaden Daniels is coming in and the kid from Baylor is somebody that they're bringing in. They're trying to bring in every possible transfer to be able to beat out Brady Cook. And at every single turn, Brady Cook beats out the dude that they put against him, and he is the starter that the coaching staff trusts. And then last year, it culminates with this 11-2 record, one of the best seasons for Missouri in the last 25 years. And yet, he struggles for a few games, and we can all acknowledge he did not play his best football this season, had not been playing particularly well for Mizzou. And so Mizzou fans, some, vocal minority probably, are asking for Drew Pine to come into these games because he can't possibly be worse. And so when you hear the comments from Brady Cook afterwards or Eli Drinkwitz afterwards, and Drink says, I hope we're done with the bull crap now, what he's referencing there is all of that stuff where Brady Cook is booed coming onto the field last year against Kansas State and then has a special moment, a potential legacy moment for he and the team against that squad. And you thought then maybe this is the end of the questioning. Nope. You go into this game and maybe this is the... It's not going to be. For whatever reason, there is just something about Brady Cook that fans don't fully appreciate. And I think it's really happened to just about every quarterback at Mizzou since Chase Daniel. I think that you look at some of the... James Franklin, forever underappreciated by Mizzou fans for what he did there. I think Blaine Gabbert is even a bit underappreciated for what he did, although there were moments where it wasn't great. I can acknowledge that. I wonder what is the comparison for what we are seeing right now from Mizzou. Is there a Cardinal that you guys can remember that was this unheralded? Is there a Blues player that was this underappreciated? I don't know, but whatever it is, Brady Cook, man, That was the legacy drive for him. That was the moment where I hope all Mizzou fans now come on board for the final 5 weeks of him as Missouri starter.
Yeah, that's a really good question because also hindsight is 2020, right? I know that there's a lot of players that you reflect on. It's like, man, we really didn't appreciate that person as much when they're here, and especially when you move on to something else. I'll have to think about that one. But from the 9-3-1, this is a good point, kind of what you're talking about here. 100%, there's no doubt that Cook is quarterback number one. If there's any way he can play, Pine looked fine, but not capable of taking this team to the same places that Cook can. Now, last year, I will point out that some of the issues, it seemed like, with the quarterback battle is because Eli Drinkwitz said that it was kind of a quarterback competition to begin the season between Horn and with Cook. So that kind of added to some of it. But you're right. Cook has rightfully earned every single step of the way his role right now with this team. And for him to come back, especially dealing with that injury, coming back in that game and orchestrating that comeback victory over Auburn. And I know that some people will point out this is not a good Auburn team. Look at their record. If you actually watch Auburn this season, I know the turnovers have been a big issue, but they're really not that bad of a team. They really aren't. That was a big battle for them to come back into with Mizzou in that one.
The text line, and I have an answer for you, BK, and the text line immediately, the first couple of answers we got was what I was thinking, which is a guy who you don't appreciate what he's been done for you until finally it's like shoved in your face. Like, this is what he's doing for you. And we have 618-314, a couple other people as well. Jay Bomeister.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a really good one.
If you talk to the people who were there, every day, the value of Jay Bomeister was apparent from the get-go. And then as soon as the 2019 Cup run happens, and then you talk to the people who then expound on how incredible the Bomeister-Parayko pairing was because of what Bo was able to do combined with what Parayko was able to do, I think that's exactly where my brain went as well, because as soon as you finally got it shoved in front of your face, it was like, oh, it's been like this for a couple of years now.
I think Matt Holliday is another one that somebody from 314 brings up as the Cardinals comparison for this. I think there's an element to the Brady Cook aspect of it that everybody wanted him replaced from the moment. Nobody wanted Brady from the moment that he got to Mizzou. People just immediately were like, well, 3-star recruit, the second best quarterback in his own class, both from St. Louis. Macon was the guy that people wanted to be the next guy. And then they wanted a transfer quarterback over Brady Cook. And then they wanted Sam Horn over Brady Cook. So every year there was something new, a new log thrown into the fire of, yeah, well, anybody but Cook. Whatever it is, it's got to be somebody else. There's got to be a better answer here. And the truth is there hasn't been. He's been the guy all along. And so I think that's where it gets back to the Jay Bomeister. And look, he's not as good at college football as Jay Bomeister was at the NHL. Jay Bomeister's a future Hall of Famer. But the corollary there is you don't totally appreciate what they do for you until it's no longer there. And then you're like, man, I wish we could just get our next Jay Bomeister. What that could mean.
And it feels like you're constantly searching for it.
And for Mizzou, we talked about this a little bit off air, Brooke. They don't have a true answer at the quarterback position going into next year. No. So I do wonder if next season we're going to look back and say, man, should have appreciated those Brady Cook years a little bit more, because at least we knew the answer at the position every single game.
Another take on this, on our statement here. Are you kidding me, guys? You're making Mizzou out to be the team of the century and Cook to be the quarterback of the century. Mizzou is an average team, and you've been doing nothing but bashing Cook, as well as everybody else this entire season. He has one good drive in a decent game, and all of a sudden he's the hero of Missouri. Come on, guys. This is getting ridiculous. See Missouri as they are.
Okay, just real quick.
I told you, Brooke.
We are not.
Way to not pay attention to any part of the segment.
Yes, okay. We're not completely saying that Cook has been perfect this season. I think Brady Cook has even said that himself, that this has not been a perfect season for him. But how are you going to chastise a player for being clutch? We talk about that all the time in every single sport. What makes so many of the great players so great? Those clutch moments where they're able to orchestrate a comeback. Not every player is capable of doing so. You could be a 5-star quarterback and still not have the ability to be clutch in those moments and orchestrate a comeback victory like that one. Cook finished with 194 yards passing in less than 2 quarters of play on an ankle that he had to go to the hospital for and get checked out. I will never fault him for that and what he was able to do. Also, I do want to give credit to Mizzou's defense and what they were able to do in the game, because that was another big portion of this, is Mizzou's defense. They shut Auburn down when they had a chance to put the game away, holding Hugh Freeze's team to 286 yards of total offense. That was another key component here, but you still needed your quarterback and Brady Cook to be able to mount that comeback for the team.
How many times have we seen this, too? Like this wasn't the first time. We saw it against Vandy. He put together the game-winning drives when they needed it most this season. Against Florida, 4th and 17, conversion to Luther Burden. We saw this against Kentucky, where after they got that 4th down fake punt, he ends up helping them go on the run that they needed. Against LSU, yes, he had a really bad interception in that game. Totally understand to finish things off. The dude threw for 400 yards against that LSU defense last year. Against Kansas State, led the game-winning drive ultimately that led to the field goal. He's done this time and time and time again. And I think maybe most importantly, the dude has proven to you that he is tough as nails. He is not a perfect quarterback. I'm not sure he's a top 20 quarterback in the country right now. I don't know, somewhere probably just beyond that. But he's a good one. And I think what people maybe misrepresent is how few good quarterbacks there are at the collegiate level. Missouri is a good team. Not a great one, but a good team. And in 2024, that might be good enough to get you to the college football playoff. Last year, it would not have, because there were more good teams in the country than there are this season. But this year, if you go 11-1, just maybe all it takes to be a good team nowadays, you could potentially get there with Brady Cook as your quarterback, that good defense that Brooke just referenced. I'm not suggesting that he is the second coming of Chase Daniel, but he's a solid college quarterback.
Exactly, and especially with the landscape of college football this season, this is what you need from this team, is what Brady Cook was able to do this past week. And people also want us to know, BK, that the hospital was just across the street.
Oh, what?
I don't know.
Somebody else says, there's a game to get an x-ray for a sprained ankle. Big deal. Tape it up and get back out there.
The straw manning right now in the text line's amazing.
BK is just at a loss for words, which might be a
high
first.
Ankle sprain, if that's what it is.
Are you forgetting?
It's a 6 to 8 week injury for most guys.
Yes.
Not if you're Sam Bradford. Are you forgetting?
Then it's a career-ending injury.
No, it's 4 weeks and then it's a career-ending injury. Are you forgetting Auburn dropped the touchdown pass that would have made it 24-3 and then missed a field goal? Yeah, BK. Are you forgetting these other 27 plays I'm going to mention from the play-by-play that obviously affected the outcome of the game? And because we do this with every game, we talk about every play that brings context, and we never react to a fourth quarter without talking about the play that could have changed the game in the first quarter. We never do that.
Yeah, no. Tony Romo, forever remembered as being clutch because he has the best fourth quarter passer rating in the history of the NFL. No, we remember that, not the botched snap on the field goal and all of the interceptions that he threw over the years. For sure, that's the way this works. We definitely are good with context and nuance as a sports viewing. If you take one thing from what I have to say about the Brady Cook thing, I think Brady Cook is a really solid college quarterback that has become underappreciated for what he's done for Mizzou, and I think we will appreciate it more when he's gone. And I think that there is something to a kid that stayed local, decided to go to that nobody cares more about Mizzou than Brady Cook.
Yes.
And whether you think it was not a big deal or the biggest deal in the world that he ended up hurting his ankles pretty severely, it appears, and came back into that game showing toughness and gritting through it to have multiple runs on 3rd and 4th down to push Missouri towards victory against an average Auburn team, and that's what they are. They're average. I don't know what to tell you, man, but that was a really good win by Mizzou, a necessary win for Mizzou, and if they had lost that game, we would have been criticizing them for it. So since they won it, I'm going to give them the credit that they deserve.
Yeah, we would be criticizing, especially if Cook didn't come back. Then people say, oh, come on, he could have come back in this game.
Just an ankle injury.
Yeah, it's just an ankle injury. The hospital was just across the street. He could have hobbled back over. Come on, guys. No. Those clutch moments. No, you can't be.
Like, sometimes we can just celebrate a positive thing that happened over the weekend. But, man, we are pretty negative on this text line on this beautiful Monday morning in St. Louis.
A win is a win, okay? That's the thing to remember here. That's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we'll head to the celebrity line to talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. That's next here on the opening drive.
You know, there's really cool things that are going on behind the scenes, and despite all the negativity and everything you hear in a political season, there's really positive stuff that local companies are working on, and Classic Air Care is one of them. They've got a program called Feel the Love, and over the last few weeks, they installed free of charge, in conjunction with Lennox, new HVAC units in 3 different homes where the families needed heating getting into the winter. How about that? Free of charge. They teamed up with Lennox. It's a program called Feel the Love. You can see about the families on their website at classicaircare.com to make sure that their home is comfortable and ready for the winter. Free of charge, installed brand new HVAC units. That's why when you have a choice of who to call, of who to reach out to, whether you want your unit in your house serviced, whether you need a replacement, whether you need some questions answered about what to do, you support those kind of companies that support our local community. That's the circle of life in this world. That's the circle of life in this business, and that is why I'm proud to sit here and tell you that when my family is in need, they call Classic Air Care as well. So reach out to Classic Air Care. Go to classicaircare.com. If you're getting ready for the winter and you know that you need to get that unit checked out, serviced, or replaced, do it now. Reward the companies that reward our community, classicaircare.com.
On ESPN, presented by Boardwalk Hardwood Floors. Find your perfect new floor at boardwalkhardwood.com.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BK here alongside with Matthew Rocchio. And we go to the celebrity line now to talk to the radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Kerbs, how are you doing this Monday morning?
Brooke, I'm good today. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. I didn't call you Chris this time, so we're off to a roaring start here. I said Kerbs.
Okay,
I remembered properly.
I was given that name. I'm okay with that. I like the name.
I know, but you're Kerbs. You're Kerbs. You're always Kerbs.
No, it's Christian. It's actually, the first name's actually Christian, not Christopher. So that is a difference. It is Christian, not Christopher. So if you said, hey, Christopher, I'd be like, Christian. But Chris is good, too.
And who calls you Christian? Does your family, parents, anybody, or is it always just been Chris?
No, actually, no one. No, listen, actually, I don't even remember mom or dad snapping on me and calling me Christian too much. Nope. Not many people. You will see Christopher will come out every now and then, and I'm like, oop, got that one wrong. But no one actually really called me Christian too much, but I do love the name.
There you go. All right. Well, there was a lot to love. Yes, Kerbs.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there's a lot to love this weekend with the Blues and their 4-3 victory over the Canes. Kerbs, what stood out to you the most about this win and how the team played?
Well, you know what? The challenge in the first period to me, and I've seen this a lot, when you play a game like they played the game before against the New York Islanders, and they play, and Patrick Waugh has that Islanders team playing that kind of lock it down, almost boring Lou Lamoriello style of hockey, as much as you can muck it up in today's world. Drew Bannister, going back to the Islanders game, said it may take us 58 minutes to get the lead, but we have to stick with it, and it turns out it took 62 minutes and 2 seconds. The challenge that I've seen over the years, guys, is when you end up playing a team like that and you play that, and it works, right? You get the success like they had in that game. When you go against a team the next night that doesn't play that way, that maybe is still good defensively like Carolina is, but has a more offensive push, has a little more offensive jam, has a little more physical jam, it almost takes a moment for you to recalibrate, and in this case it took the first period. I like the fact that they recalibrated, that they came out and they really started to turn the tide of that game in the second period, and that's the positive there. So the one thing we've seen is this team has fallen behind, I believe, just about every single game but the 1-0 game. So 5 out of the 6 games they've fallen behind by at least a goal, and in most of them by 2 goals. They're learning how to win tight games and how to come back, and that, I think, can only be a positive if you don't let it catch up to you.
To that point, Curbs, I mentioned earlier today, the thing that I think is most different, or at least feeling is most different about this team, is they seem to have the ability to put a bad period behind them. They didn't play their best period on Saturday night in that first, and then suddenly they come out in the second and they look much better. We've seen that in many games already so far this year. For you, what is the single thing that feels the most different about the 2024 Blues compared to last year's Blues?
Well, maybe from a little bit like a 15,000-foot view, BK, for me, it feels like the culture of the team is different. I know that when the organization went out, and we all know, publicly that they were looking for players of a certain age with a skill set, with ability, with contract term, you name it. But the other thing that they also really realized is we've got to do something in the locker room. We've got to improve kind of the culture of the room, because, and I'll tell you this, once a losing culture creeps in, it can be hard to get out. Because all of a sudden when things snowball, you start to look around, you look for somebody else to pick it up, that kind of thing. The good news is in finding ways to come back like they did in the opening game against Seattle, doing the same thing then in Game 2 against San Jose. The fact that you've got 4 wins on the season and 3 of them are come from behind. They haven't had anything really snowball against them yet, which is a positive, and that's been some success reinforcement of what the coaching staff is trying to do. Having said that, there's a vibe and a feeling, and like you just saw it at the end of the game when Robert Thomas gets cheap-shotted and cross-checked. I think it was Svechnikov that got him. Braden Shen came over, and everybody, including Joe Hofer, ended up in that scrum in the corner. We've seen that. We saw it in training camp games. We've seen it a couple times this year. Someone's taking a couple extra pokes at Binnington, and like 3 players are kind of on him. That's something that, honestly, I haven't seen in a couple of years. So, to me, BK, the biggest thing is something that is extremely important, and that's the culture of a mindset.
We're talking to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. And Kerbs, looking at these new acquisitions, there is so much to like, right? But I talked about specifically earlier the Joseph brothers and the energy that they brought to this team.
Yeah, I go back to a camp story where it was like day 2 or day 3 of camp, and Matthew Joseph, in the locker room had taken his shirt off, and he's walking back into where the players, or I'm sorry, it was Dylan Holloway had taken his shirt off, was walking back into the training room, and Matthew Joseph barks from, and this is D2, right? Matthew Joseph barks from across the room, and says, Holly, put that shirt on, you're embarrassing the rest of us. And there was just a comfort and some liveliness to it. So first off, they're bringing these two, and I know Alex, I'm sitting here with Alex later. Alex had a chance to catch up with them a little bit. Like, they've got extremely engaging personalities, extraordinarily positive-minded personalities. And then what they're bringing on the ice, I mean, Matthew Joseph, right from the start, and that first preseason game, I think it was the Dallas game. I mean, hitting anything in sight, showing the speed, showing the play, showing the opportunity, and that's what the Blues have here for players like he and his brother. Opportunity, and they're taking full advantage of it. So They're bringing exactly what the Blues wanted in that third-line role, the ability to bang, the ability to get in there, the ability with your speed to put pressure onto the puck, and also showing the ability to chip in offensively. And he'll even tell you he thinks they've left some opportunities on the table, and that's a great mindset to have.
Kerbs, final question that I've got for you. We're talking to Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. Philip Broberg is currently tied for the lead on the team with 6 points. He has a point in every game so far this year. He is tied for the lead on the team with a +6 in terms of the plus-minus so far this year. He is playing almost 20 minutes of ice time per night. He's 23 years old. It was a massive move in the offseason when the Blues decided to make it. I mean, I feel like every time that we talk to you, we got to ask you the latest question about how great Philip Broberg is. So that's what this is. Just how great is this kid, Kerbs?
If you had given me $1 million this past summer and said you have to place all this on one bet on whether or not that offer sheet for Philip Broberg would go through, I would have bet against it. And I would have bet against it because you look at the needs of the Edmonton Oilers. You look at the fact that while they are in some cap-challenging situations, when you have those situations, you've got to have some players under cost control. And this was an up-and-comer where, yes, while he had been in and out of the lineup and even down to the minors last year, when you start to look what he did when the pressure was on in the playoffs, he looked really good. So I'd have lost that $1 million that you gave me, which is why I don't bet my own, right? But having said that, now that he's here, he's playing with Justin Falk. Justin Falk talks about how he knows, like, I can let him go up. I got his back because they both can skate really well, can play really hard. And he's just coming into his own. He's starting to play. He's going to make some mistakes, but his willingness, for example, on that goal to Holloway, to jump in, and then he came down the left wing, he cut it to the middle. And Joe and I were talking about it on the air at that moment. You've got to have defensemen willing to take smart risks that can show their skill, like the Cale Makars, like the Adam Foxes, because it is dynamically changing how teams look and how other teams have to defend against them. He's doing that. Now, look, while you're excited about the 6 points, for me, right from the start of camp, man, as he killed plays. And there's a specific play that pops into my mind in Seattle where he has the puck on the left wing, looking to exit the zone. He looked to the middle of the ice to see if the play was there, didn't have it, chipped it off the glass, and got it out. Like, okay, that's a smart play right off the bat in game number 1, and he's just added to that. So you're going to get enamored a little bit potentially with the offense, which I would expect to tamper and slow down a little bit at some point in time, right? But he's killing plays in the defensive zone and looking really, really good.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Kerbs.
All right, you guys, have an awesome day.
Enjoy the show today, Kerbs.
Yep. All right, I'll try to do my best for you, BK. Keep Alex in line.
Please do.
That is the radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Coming up next, we have the fight, and we do need a fighter to face me today, unless BK just for some reason wants...
Brooke. I've seen the questions. Okay. I'm ineligible.
All right. That just conveniently happens. All right. If you want to fight me, coming up next, just text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399. Yo-ho! The fight is next.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Wins for both the Missouri Tigers and the Fighting Illini puts the Fighting Illini ahead of the Tigers in the new rankings. But the big news from college football, of course, was the loss for at the time number 7 Alabama as they fell to at the time number 11 ranked Tennessee 24-17. The big news from the college football weekend. Also over the weekend, the Blues with a 4-3 win over the Hurricanes. They'll be in action tomorrow facing off against the Winnipeg Jets. You can hear more Blues talk on our 101 ESPN website for our podcast presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can hear that later on when it goes up. And also over the weekend, St. Louis City SC wrapped up their 2024 season with a disappointing 4-1 loss to Minnesota United. That is your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Welcome to the fight. In the red corner, Average Joe Listener. And in the blue corner, the undisputed king of morning drive. Please welcome Randy Carricker.
Welcome back to the opening drive. I'm Brandon Kiley. That's Matt Rocchio. We have John joining us today for the fight. He's going up against Brooke. John, how you doing on this beautiful Monday morning in St. Louis?
I'm good, BK. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. Let's get this thing started, my friend. Question number 1. Before Steph Curry was selected 7th overall in the 2009 draft by the Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves infamously selected 2 other point guards with the 5th and 6th overall selections that year. Those picks were Johnny Flynn and who else? Was it A, Brandon Jennings, B, Tyreek Evans, or C, Ricky Rubio? Who was the other point guard selected by the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Tyreek Evans.
All right, moving on to number 2. Excuse me, John. When the Packers took down the Steelers in Super Bowl, I don't know how to read Roman numerals. No, I'm just kidding. Super Bowl 45. Who won MVP for the Packers? That was after the 2010 season. When the Packers took down the Steelers in Super Bowl 45, who won the MVP for the Packers? Was that B.J. Raji, Aaron Rodgers, or Nick Collins?
I gotta go with the obvious, I guess. Aaron Rodgers.
All right, question number 3. Last night, the New York Liberty won their first ever title, and now the pressure is on the New York Knicks, who have not won a title since 1973. John, who did they beat in that matchup in the NBA Finals in 1973? Was it A, the Lakers, B, the Rockets, or C, the Warriors? Who did the Knicks beat in the 1973 NBA Finals?
Lakers.
And the last time the Yankees won the World Series, a player at an unconventional position for this award took home the World Series MVP. Who was it? Was it Mariano Rivera, Robinson Cano, or Hideki Matsui?
Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry.
The last time the Yankees won the World Series, a player at an unconventional position for this award took home the World Series MVP. Who was it? Was it Mariano Rivera, Robinson Cano, or Hideki Matsui?
Cano. Robinson Cano.
All right, we'll double check our score and we will bring in Brooke Grimsley.
John, how you feeling today? You have now gone through the fight. You got your 4 questions. How you feeling?
Not real confident.
What were you hoping for? You were probably hoping for hockey, weren't you?
I was hoping for hockey. That's my that's my main go-to. I'm not much of a basketball guy, but
I don't want to hear it.
But that's okay. That's okay.
That's how this goes.
I'm having fun regardless.
There you go. That's,
Thank you so much, John.
That's
I
how this
appreciate
goes.
that.
Whatever it is that you want to hear more of, that's typically the sport that you don't get any of. Brooke, say hello to John. John is going up against you today in the fight.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
I'm good, Brooke. How are you?
I am doing great. Ready to get this over with.
All right, Brooke.
Did you bring your grapes? Did you bring your grapes, Brooke?
No. Okay, so this morning I was actually thinking about it because I have grapes in the fridge, but I haven't washed them yet. I could have gotten up just a little bit earlier to wash them, but I did not. And so all I have is my Belvita, little crunchy Belvita blueberry this morning.
There we go.
And coffee, of course.
Maybe I stand a chance then. Maybe, but I doubt
We're going with the modified edition, right? You will let me know which question that you want
Yes.
the answers for? Okay.
2 of them.
Two.
Unless we want to do 3.
No,
or 4.
2. You get 2.
All right, question number 1.
Okay.
Before Steph Curry was selected 7th overall in 2009 by the Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected 2 other point guards, they did so infamously now, with the 5th and 6th overall selections. Those picks were Johnny Flynn and who else? Who was the other point guard that the Minnesota Timberwolves selected prior to Steph Curry, 5th and 6th overall? Johnny Flynn was one. Who was the other?
Yes. Just as I was hoping, an NBA question to kick things off. I see what you did there because I actually voiced my tactic before of how I try to keep my options for later in the fight, but I'm going to have to go with an option here.
Okay. The options are A, Brandon Jennings, B, Tyreek Evans, or C, Ricky Rubio.
I will go with Brandon Jennings.
Okay.
Question mark?
Brooke,
You like the question mark at the end
yeah,
there?
I like that. Confidence locks it in. When the Packers took down the Steelers in Super Bowl 45, that was following the 2010 season, who won MVP for the Packers? When the Packers took down the Steelers in Super Bowl 45 following the 2010 NFL season, who won the MVP for the Packers?
Is this a trick question? I feel like this might be
I
a
don't
trick
ask
question.
trick questions.
Yes, you do.
Excuse you? Jesus.
I'm going to go with some conviction here and hope it's not a trick question, but I feel like it would be Aaron Rodgers.
Question number 3.
Better not be a trick question.
Last night, the New York Liberty won their first ever title, and now the pressure is on the New York Knickerbockers, who have not won a title since 1973. Who did the Knicks beat in that matchup in the NBA Finals in 1973, Brooke?
Yeah, I'll go with the options here, BK.
All right, is it A, the LA Lakers, B, the Houston Rockets, or C, the Golden State Warriors? Lakers, Rockets, or Warriors are your 3 options.
Lakers? I'll go with the Lakers.
Okay.
Question mark.
All right, Brooke. The last time the Yankees won the World Series, a player at an unconventional position for this award took home the World Series MVP. Who was it?
Ooh, it would be the first Japanese player born to do so. That would be Matsui.
I didn't think about that.
I am a huge Japanese player fan, as we all know.
Kind of realized that as I got to question 4. I was like, oh, she might not need the options on this one.
By the way, 2009 and also was the DH.
If you're right.
That was a huge moment for him and for the Japanese-born player. I feel like he's really underrated, honestly, when you look at Matsui and his career.
All right, well, we'll see if that is correct.
We have a winner.
I had conviction there.
In
now,
today's
some
fight,
of the
yes.
other ones.
Conviction on 2, not so much on the other ones, but you had options there. So, Brooke taking on John. Does half conviction, is that enough for Brooke Grimsley plus the options? Or does John take her down in today's fight? Or as I like to say, does the Grim Reaper take another soul? Ring that bell.
The winner and still champion of the fight, Randy Carricker.
Just like that. Sorry, John. Brooke Grimsley took you down by a score of 3-2, and she wins today's fight. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I had fun, but they were all trick questions. To your point, Brooke, they were all trick questions to me. So
I'm with you, John, on this one.
Unbelievable.
Justice for Brooke and John.
Justice for Brooke and John. We'll go with the questions and answers. Frankly, some incredible questions and great answers on this one. Before Stephen Curry was selected with the 7th overall pick in 2009 NBA draft by the Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected 2 different point guards with the 5th and 6th overall pick. It was, of course, Johnny Flynn, Syracuse legend, and happy birthday to our boy, Ricky Rubio. The Spaniard was the other guy. He was a little bit more successful than Johnny Flynn, though not nearly as successful as your boy,
It's a guy
Stephen
who gets
Curry.
too much hate because of the Curry thing. Ricky Rubio was a really good player. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to shoot, which is problematic in this day and age. 20 years ago, he would have been one of the best players in the NBA.
If he's 10 years older, he's a completely different player. I mean, and learned how to shoot, became a really good defender. Ricky Rubio was a damn solid player, but obviously when you get taken one spot ahead of Stephen Curry, it's rough. When the Packers took down the Steelers in Super Bowl 45 after the 2010 NFL season, it was Aaron Rodgers. I was trying to get a little tricksy on that one. Nick Collins
BK,
had a
it feels like sometimes the obvious answer is like
especially
you don't feel
Super
great
Bowl
about
MVPs are always tough.
Nick Collins had a 71 or 76 yard yard interception return
You'll have
in
like
that game.
The Patriots ones are always kind of weird.
Yeah.
Deion Branch.
Yep.
I think he won like the 03 one. Though I cannot remember off the top of my head who won.
Who won it for the Buccaneers back in the day? Who ended up getting
Dexter
it?
Jackson.
Yeah, that's right. He was a funky one as well.
He had 2 picks, including one taken back for a touchdown. In that game.
Antonio Holmes won it for the Steelers. Anyways, yeah.
How am I blanking on the Patriots one in 2001? It wasn't Brady, was it?
Tom Brady won it the first year.
He did win in 01? Okay.
And then the second one, and then Deion Branch won it in 05.
Okay, so Brady did win 2 out of the first 3. Last night, the New York Liberty won their first ever title, and now the pressure is on the Knicks, who have not won a title since 1973 when they beat the Los Angeles Lakers, headed up by Bill Sherman. And the last time the Yankees won the World Series, a player at an unconventional position for this award took home the World Series MVP. Mariano Rivera won it back in the day. He's only one of 4 relief pitchers to win it. Robinson Cano would have been the second baseman ever to win the award, but it was not him. It was, in fact, I did not cook this answer for Brooke Grimsley. I promise everybody this was just because of the Yankees and the World Series was decided over the weekend. I swear it was Hideki Matsui who won it as just the one of just 2 DHs, full-time DHs, to ever win the World Series MVP alongside David Ortiz. There has been 4 total part-time/full-time DHs. Jorge Soler and Paul Molitor also DH'd in the World Series, where they also won their MVP. But the only full-time DHs to win, David Ortiz, and in 2009 with the Yankees, it was Hideki Matsui. So it was a 3-2 win for Brooke Grimsley in today's fight. John, thank you so much for joining the fight and joining the show.
Guys, thanks a lot. I really love the show. Listen every morning, watch every morning. You guys are great.
Thank you so much, John, for listening and for watching. That was the fight. Coming up next, Giancarlo Stanton, is he a reminder of what postseason success can mean for a failed, putting that in air quotes, acquisition? That's coming up next here on The Opening Drive.
Stanton, a high fly ball, deep into left field, up into the bleachers. Giancarlo Stanton connects a 3-run blast. And a high drive into left center field. Stanton is going to watch another one fly. Are you kidding me? Giancarlo Stanton made for the moment. Again.
Brooke BK and Rocchio here. And, of course, if you've been watching the Yankees during that season, they were able to beat the Guardians in extra innings on Saturday to advance to the World Series, the Yankees' first World Series appearance since 2009. And, of course, if you were watching, you know that Giancarlo Stanton was the MVP for everything he was doing, and he was named the ALCS MVP for all of his work. But when you look at Giancarlo Stanton and his overall career in the Bronx, I think a lot of people think about his injuries, right? That has been the story with Giancarlo Stanton, is that he's a very injury-prone player. But when he moved over to just being primarily their DH, I think that's when things really changed for Stanton. And what he's also able to do during the postseason, I think that is what's really changed kind of the view of his time in the Bronx.
How would you feel if I told you the Cardinals were paying a player about $30 million per year? He was a .235 hitter and was about 15% above league average. Oh, by the way, he brings no value defensively, no value on the base paths. That's all he does. He's only there for hitting. Not thrilled about that, right?
No.
That is basically Brendan Donovan offensively in terms of the overall OPS plus number. That's what Giancarlo Stanton has been in his entire New York Yankees career, a 790 OPS, which is like a solid major league hitter. Nothing more, nothing less. And then in the postseason, he goes on to become Aaron Judge. In his postseason career, he's a .270 hitter with an OPS of over 1,000. He has playoff moments seemingly every time they reach the postseason. Now, this is the first time that he's been able to have those moments that matter and gets his team to the World Series because he now has the talent around him. This, to me, Brooke, as I was watching over the weekend, I was thinking, man, I wish there was an opportunity for Nolan Arenado to have this kind of a moment with the Cardinals.
Yes.
Because the numbers offensively are not all that dissimilar, honestly, between Giancarlo Stanton and Nolan Arenado. Nolan has not dealt with the same kind of injury issues that Stanton has, but the production hasn't been what a lot of Cardinals fans were expecting when he got here. The difference, though, is that Stanton shows out when the moments matter the most. Arenado has not yet. He's also had very limited opportunities to be able to do so. You look at what Giancarlo Stanton, he's had 150 plate appearances in the postseason for the Yankees. That is opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. If the Cardinals get this thing back on track and Nolan stays here, both of which are massive question marks, and I'm not sure either is going to happen, but going down this path, this is what he needs in order to get Cardinals fans to look back on his time here in St. Louis fondly. Because no Yankees fan earlier this year was looking back at Giancarlo Stanton fondly, and now they will. Now they'll remember him as that dude came up clutch.
Exactly.
That's what they'll remember him for.
Especially in the postseason, because it's just two different animals, what you see in the regular season and what you see in the postseason, especially with baseball, because there's just so many games during the regular season. And I don't know if you know this, but Stanton hasn't played more than 114 games or had more than 459 plate appearances in a regular season since 2021. And with him turning 35, it's hard to see that not changing, but the payoff is worth it, right, when you see what he's able to do during the postseason, being your ALCS MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it helps. It doesn't make it all worth it. He's making $35 million a year.
Of course.
So it's a lot of money.
And you need other players to be able to come through.
No doubt
but
about
to
it.
have Stanton do what he's been able to do in the postseason, it just shows you the biggest differences of what a player can do if they have the kind of clutch gene in them that you see in the postseason. We've talked about in the past some of the best Cardinals postseason players you've ever seen. Think about those players. Albert Pujols. I mean, he was always good during the regular season too, but then the postseason, it's like he was able to take it up a notch. And to your point about Nolan Arenado, we haven't been able to see him in those situations to know if he has that clutch gene in him in the postseason, if he can take it up another notch in that level.
I mean, we saw it. It just didn't go well.
It was just a very small sample size,
It was
too.
an incredibly small sample size. He had every opportunity to come through in big spots, but unfortunately, he didn't. He had hard hit balls, and sometimes in the postseason, you live by the batted ball luck, and the batted ball luck was very much not on his side. But you look back, he's had 3 games in the postseason for the Cardinals in his Cardinals playoff career. He's had 12 plate appearances. I mentioned earlier, 150 postseason plate appearances for Giancarlo, Stanton, that's the difference, man. It's opportunity, and it's coming through when given those opportunities. Stanton has, Nolan Arenado has not. I think the same thing could be said for Paul Goldschmidt. Ultimately, that's how these guys are remembered. When you look back at the Cardinals players that you remember most fondly, they were guys that came through in the clutch moments. They had playoff moments, and if they didn't, you probably don't remember them to the same degree. That's where legacies are made in Major League Baseball. And if you're Giancarlo Stanton, he's not a Hall of Famer. He's a guy that's going to go down regular season-wise as a disappointment relative to his contract that he was given because of injuries, because of lack of production. But he's going to be remembered as a hero in St. Louis, in New York, especially if this team ends up going on and winning the World Series this year.
Yeah, because it's recency bias. And by the way, it will be the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series. On the other side, the NLCS MVP, talking about clutch players, Tommy Edman has been fantastic for the Dodgers and what he's been able to do. He had a 2-run homer last night. He drove in, 4 runs for the team in general, and he was named the NLCS MVP. Tommy Edman, just seeing him succeed, especially with the Dodgers. He's not maybe your biggest piece, obviously, because you have some bigger names there, but he was the story during the NLCS for the Dodgers, where he was able to come through in clutch moments for this team.
He was. The real story to me was that they took so many walks. They took more walks in that series than any team ever has before. Mets led the league in walks this season, so it wasn't a huge surprise. That's a very patient team. They have a very clear approach at the plate. They ended up just putting way too much pressure, too many pitches on that Mets staff, but Tommy Edman cashed in on those. The guys at the top of the order would take their walks. Tommy Edman would come through in the clutch, and that's how you end up getting a NLCS MVP for him. I look at where we are with this postseason, Brooke, the Yankees versus the Dodgers, and first of all, it's about as good of a payoff as you could ask for if you're Major League Baseball. You've got the big stars on the Yankee side of things. You've got Judge. You've got Soto. You've got the big stars on the Dodger side of things. You've got Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani going head-to-head in this series. I also think it's just a reminder of how flawed every team in Major League Baseball was this year.
Yeah.
Because I look at the Dodgers team. They've got 1.5 starters, really, and they just won a 7-game series despite that. You look at the Yankees. Most Yankees fans, fans of that team, hated their team for the first 4 months of the season or so. It came together in October. They also, in my opinion, had a little bit of an easier path than what you typically would expect to get through October. And now here we are with two teams that are flawed but fun and star-driven, and that's what we've got for the World Series. It's, yet again, to go back to the Cardinals, a reminder that if you want to get to the promised land, you want to get to the place where your team has a chance to win a chip, you need Juan Soto to come through with an OPS over 1,100. You need guys that are your best players to come through in the biggest moments. The Dodgers, yes, we can talk all we want to about Tommy Edman. He was great. Mookie Betts has an OPS over 1,000 this postseason. When you look at what we've seen so far from Shohei Ohtani, OPS nearing 1,000. Max Muncy has an OPS of 1,000. The guys that you were counting on the most have come through for these teams. The Cardinals haven't had that in a really long time.
And to your point, too, if you are wanting to get that point, it seems like you have to spend a lot of money because those players you're listed, they cost a lot of money. Sure. And that kind of seems opposite of the vision of what the Cardinals are going towards. As we know that payroll is going down, maybe things will change a little bit further into the future, but that definitely sounds different vision-wise. Don't you think that just the 4 teams that were left, that basically what the Guardians were doing is maybe kind of the plan that the Cardinals would rather follow when you're talking about payroll and things aligning for them?
What way? Because
the Guardians were 23rd in Major League Baseball payroll this season, and so you had enough players, you had a young core, but then you had a couple of guys that you were paying good money for that were able to help bring this team together. The just getting in mentality.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know how you replicate what the Guardians did because I don't think what they did is sustainable. They didn't have a rotation. They had one starter that could do much of anything. And they have a superstar in the middle of their order with Ramirez. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, they've mostly just got kind of good players around them. So I think the Cardinals can do it in a different way than what the Guardians just did. I'm not sure they're trying to replicate any of the models of the 4 teams that were remaining this year in the postseason. Not one for one by any stretch.
Yeah, that's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we are going to have our Rush Hour Reset. The college football playoff is wide open. What does that mean for Mizzou and Illinois? That's coming up next here on the opening drive.
Recapping the biggest stories of the day on the opening drive with a Rush Hour Reset.
Brought to you by James Carlton State Farm. Are your car and home insurance rates competitive?
Find out at carltoninsurance.net.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke, BK, and Rocchio here. And look, we're going to get into some college football, but we got an interesting text in discussing our last segment that we just had talking about baseball. And of course, you have the Yankees and the Dodgers going to the World Series. And from the 314, the league is not fair anymore. I don't really have much interest anymore. So my question would be, BK and Rocchio, what do you think would have been the two fair teams to get to the World Series then this season?
I mean, it was this. These are the two teams that are quote-unquote most deserving. Like last year, the Diamondbacks got there. They weren't a great team all year long. They won, 86 games, I believe it was? They were the 6th seed. The Phillies 2 years ago. Now, that is nobody's definition of a Cinderella story. They had crazy payroll, all of the stars you could possibly ask for. That was a Dave Dombrowski team through and through, but 6th seed, got hot at the right time. A couple of years ago, the Braves reconstructed their outfield at the deadline, found a way to get in, win the World Series. 2019, the Washington Nationals were a team that kind of pick you up by the bootstraps type of team. Most of the teams that have won the World Series over the past 5 years, or at least been there from the National League, have been surprises. This is the rare opportunity where you did get what a lot of people consider to be the two best teams in the postseason that made it to the World Series, and the two highest payrolls in the league that made it to the World Series. This is a rarity, not the rule.
This is kind of like what I've always actually appreciated on par, just professional sports more than non-professional sports, because at no point was any expectation that this is fair, equitable, or that the best teams are going to be the ones that win. Like the team, when you say who deserves to be there, that doesn't exist in pro sports. Who got there? That's the only answer. That's the only question you need to ask. The question, who deserves to be there the most, that question doesn't exist in this world. The question is, who got there? And fair and equitable, suck it up, Buttercup. It's not fair. It never has been fair. The Yankees had the murderer's row in the 20s. They had money. They had checkbook baseball in the late 90s and 2000s. They won 3 in a row, and they were supposed to break baseball when they gave Rodriguez the contract they gave him. Get over it. We'll keep playing baseball, and, things are going to change. For all we know, the Yankees are going to suck in a couple years.
A lot of people hated the Cardinals in the early 2000s because they were just too dominant, right?
Exactly.
Well, guess what? They ended up getting one World Series out of that first stretch of teams, and it was in 06, which was arguably the worst version of that set of teams. It's really hard to win in the postseason in Major League Baseball. If anything, and I know I get laughed at for this, but I truly feel this way, if I've learned anything from this postseason, it's that the Cardinals are probably a little closer than it appears right now on the outside looking in. Because I think all of these teams were remarkably flawed. I think the Padres, I still believe this today, I think the Padres were the best team in this year's postseason. And they just happened to lose in a 5-game set, and that sometimes happens, man. The best team does not always win the World Series. The best team does not always win the NCAA championship. Sometimes the best team goes home, and you end up with a team that was the hottest at the right time, and they win the World Series. And they should not apologize for it, but I think sometimes it ends up being a team that's flawed, and that's what both of these teams are that make it to the World Series.
And here's a great example. January 2002. The St. Louis Rams are favored by 2 touchdowns over the New England Patriots, and the next century of football has changed because they can't win that football game. Like things,
and I still believe the Rams were the better team.
Exactly, but who won? The Patriots. And what matters in history over the last 25 years of the sport? The Patriots won that game, and the next 20 years happened.
100%. And the thing is this is exactly what Major League Baseball wanted. And I understand you see the money that both of these teams have spent, and maybe that's the thing that is turning people off, right? It's because you see the amount of money they spent. But when you look at the Dodgers starting rotation, this is not the starting rotation that they envision for this team, especially for the postseason. You do have your big stars, which is something that really helps viewership when Shohei Ohtani, you have Mookie Betts, you have Aaron Judge, you have Juan Soto, you have so many of these big stars and compelling storylines that will drive up viewership. Even the casual baseball fan, or maybe not even a baseball fan in general, will tune in because these are names that they're all familiar with. So when you look at the ratings, especially for last year, they were not great. But now the ratings are better this season, and I imagine they'll be fantastic for this World Series.
Yeah, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, playoffs are somewhat random. Getting in, though, is not. Having 6 times the payroll of other teams gives you a huge advantage in that regard. That I agree with. I do agree with that. You get in more often when you pay more for players, which should be incentive for owners to pay more for players. That's the way that I've always looked at this. Like, I'm not going to diminish what the Mets or the Phillies or the Dodgers or the Yankees have done because they're paying their stars. I would say, hey, it's time for other owners to pony up and go out there and pay for their stars. The Kansas City Royals gave a $300 million contract to Bobby Witt Jr. If they can do that, every team in Major League Baseball can have at least one of those deals on their books. The Cardinals have two of them, had at least two of them, with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. They just didn't come through in the moments when they mattered the most. These other teams that are now representing their respective leagues in the World Series, they have. So I agree. Payroll does matter. It matters more in the regular season, though, than it does in the postseason. This is where we get to see who the most complete teams are, and that can be built in a number of different ways, not always through money.
And Game 1 of the World Series will be this Friday. The time still hasn't been announced for that. Also, this past weekend happening, we had Mizzou. They were able to come back and win against Auburn, 21-17, the final score in that. But that wasn't the only big game to watch this weekend, because you also had Illinois handling the defending national champs, Michigan, beating them 21-7, and you had Tennessee beating Alabama, and you had Georgia handing Texas their first loss of the season. It really does feel like, BK, now that the college football playoff is wide open, especially for Mizzou and Illinois, because of what's happening in college football in general. I have the motto of embrace the chaos, because you cannot predict every single weekend what will happen with any of these college football teams. The rankings don't matter. If you're ranked, unranked, it really doesn't matter this season.
For sure. And ultimately, it's going to be the resumes that do the talking. I do not envy the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, because their job is not going to be easy. It's going to be harder this year than it has been at any point previously, because there's going to be so many teams that have similar resumes, and trying to put together a coherent thought as to, okay, this is why we went with them over them, and then having a follow-up question, okay, but what about Team Z? Like you gave me X versus Y. What about Team Z that beat Team X? It's going to be really hard to put together those arguments. But to your point on Illinois and Mizzou have the same exact argument right now, which is just keep winning. If Missouri loses this weekend, I believe their chances of getting to the college football playoff are over. This is the win that you have to have on your resume, because right now, you just don't have enough potential top 25 wins by the end of the season to get there. The SEC is a bloodbath right now, man. There's going to be, 4, 5, 6 teams that have 1 or 2 losses at the end of the season. You've got to try to put yourself at the top of that list, and the only way that you can is by beating Alabama head-to-head. If you lose this one, I think it's pretty much over for you. Too many of those other teams are going to have a better resume by the end of the season. Illinois is similar. It's going to be a bloodbath once again in the Big Ten as well. You've got Penn State. You've got Ohio State. You've got Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make your way towards the top of this list, and the only way to do that is by continuing to win. And even if Illinois didn't come into this season with these kinds of expectations, Missouri did. If Illinois loses this weekend against Oregon and finishes out with a 10-2 record, it will go down as one of the best seasons in program history. That should not be talked down about. But, man, they've got a real opportunity this week. Go on the road, get another big-time win. We'll be talking about college football playoff for the Illini as well.
It really does feel like things are aligning for a 2-loss national champion this year, right? Because you look at the resumes, and that's something that will factor into all of this. And I know that I just said that rankings don't matter, but when you look at some of the teams that are above Mizzou and Illinois right now, when you're envisioning this college football playoffs, what does Mizzou and Illinois need to do, other than obviously what you just mentioned, they're winning? But is there anything else they can do to help their resume or anything like that?
No, just win and you'll be in. That's it. You go 11-1 this year, you're going to get into the college football playoff. But to what you asked about the 2-loss champion, I think there's a real chance of that happening this year.
Yeah.
Because as I watched this weekend, for example, Texas versus Georgia, Georgia was the better team on Saturday. I thought going in, though, definitively, Texas was the best team in college football. I felt that way prior
I thought the
to
same
Saturday.
thing. Yeah.
And then they just looked completely outmatched head-to-head against Georgia. And I don't know if that's something that's going to hold true, or if by the end of the season I will be going back to the notion that, oh, no, Texas is the best team in college football, and see, we saw it at the end of the year. It's just as likely that they lose in that final week of the season against Texas A&M. And then will they get in? Do they have the resume at that point to be able to get into the college football playoff? I don't know. It's very possible that we get a 2-loss champion this year, which has not happened, I believe, since 2007 when LSU did that. it's feeling more and more every weekend as if this is a rerun of the 2007 season.
There's two things that concern me with Mizzou. One, you are facing Alabama this weekend, and as we know, Brady Cook, that was the big story of the game. He was able to come back. He was dealing with the ankle issue. Is that something that will linger going into this game? That's, of course, a big concern there. But then the second thing is, do you worry that even if Mizzou beats Alabama now, that Mizzou still won't get maybe that national respect and attention, which you need when it comes to the college football playoffs, because people are already kind of riding off Alabama this season?
Are you talking about like if they go 11-1 at the end of the year, will they get into the college football playoff? Is that what we're basically asking?
Yeah, but I'm saying that people feel like this Alabama team, even if you beat them, they're kind of discrediting Alabama already this season.
They would be discredited because they would have 3 losses, and they still have to go on the road at LSU next week. So it's possible you will have beaten an 8-4 Alabama team, which is not the type of win that you thought you were going to have on your resume. I am of the belief that if you have 11 wins on your resume in the SEC, you go to the college football playoff. So to me, I'd be pretty shocked if they wouldn't get in at that point in time. I don't know if they would get in with like a 6th overall ranking where you're hosting that first round playoff game. But I think Missouri would get in with an 11-1 season. I'd be pretty surprised if they don't. I think that's just too good of a resume.
It seems like there's a lot of people who are thinking that, because some people are texting that into the text line. I saw that you responded to it where somebody said from the 636, Mizzou could go 11-1 and not make it. And you said, I do not agree with that. I think it would be shocking. I'm just saying that if you would have beaten Alabama earlier on in the season, it seems like that would have been looked at a little bit differently now that this is a team.
But by the end of the year, it would be looked at the same way. Because they've
lost to Vandy, they've lost to Tennessee. That Vandy loss
Missouri
was definitely
beaten them earlier, and they still had the same losses afterwards. You still end up beating an 8-4 Alabama team, whether it happened earlier in the year or later in the year. It's the same way.
I guess my point is that when Mizzou beat Vandy, it was looked at as a negative, but when Alabama loses to Vandy, then people are all of a sudden kind of taking Vanderbilt a little bit more seriously. Yeah, and it looks completely different. That's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, what is the biggest difference in the Blues this year versus last year? That's coming up next here on the Opening Drive.
It's the best time of the year as the NFL season is in full swing. And the only thing that's just as good as a full Sunday slate is when we get these special Mondays, when we get 2 different Monday Night Football games. So that's how I'm building my entry on Underdog Fantasy today. I'm going to join over 1 million fans across 33 states that got in the game last year by competing on Underdog. It's so easy. You can win to 1,000 times your money just by selecting higher or lower on your favorite player stats. Let's build an entry right now for the first of our 2 Monday Night Football games. Tonight, we're going to go Buccaneers and Ravens. We're going to go higher than 56.5 receiving yards for Mike Evans, because every time he gets shut down by Marshawn Lattimore, he comes back the next week and has a big game. We're going to go higher than 27.5 receiving yards because Mark Andrews is again catching the ball for the Ravens, and that's always a good thing to see. And then we're going to go higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns for Lamar Jackson, because I feel like this is one of those games where he gets in. So Mike Evans higher on receiving yards, Mark Andrews higher on receiving yards, and Lamar Jackson to score a rushing or receiving touchdown. For that entry for Monday Night Football tonight, just like that, making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. You just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or to Underdog Fantasy UnderdogFantasy.com. You can sign up with the promo code ROCC, and Underdog is going to give you a free pick to use on your first Cash Champions entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code ROCC to claim your new customer special of a free pick and a deposit offer. That means you're just going to log on, deposit your money, you're going to get your bonus cash back, and then you're just going to add that free pick you just got to the entry we just built to win some money in tonight's Monday Night Football game. And again, with Underdog Fantasy, must be 18 plus in President's Day where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Consumer with your play. Coin and of gambler. Visit www.ncbgambling.org.
Gets one by Thomas off Parayko. Suter to the corner with it. Parayko holds it in, and that'll do it. You can bring out the Zamboni. The Blues beat the Carolina Hurricanes 4-3. And one of the Canes cross-check Robert Thomas at the whistle, and Braden Shen has come in to say something about it. He's got a hold of Svechnikov and is swinging to try and get a hold of Svechnikov's face. And you better believe Braden Shen will look at Svechnikov and say, that's all right, we'll see you in November, big boy. And in the end, the St. Louis Blues get the victory. Come from behind a win. And they'll celebrate the 2 points on home ice here.
That was radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. As you heard, there's some chippiness at the end, but either way, the Blues were able to come out with a 4-3 victory over the Canes this past weekend. And, you know, Kerb's pointed this out earlier. When we're talking about the biggest difference in the Blues this year versus last year, I said the youth player, you can see the potential with this young core, but something else that he alluded to there is he was talking about the way that the players are sticking up for each other. We've already seen that this season, and you saw that in this past game where the players are sticking up for each other more. And that sounds kind of obvious, right? Like the players should be sticking up for each other. But BK, it felt like at times last year that there was opportunities for players to stick up for each other, and they really weren't.
I agree. I would go a different route in terms of what I believe is the biggest difference for the Blues this season. I think that's a big one, Brooke, but I think it's almost, yes, that is a prerequisite. I also think one of the things that this team has done differently is defend. They've actually been defending in their own zone, and to the point of that, they are 12th right now in goals allowed per game, 2.8 per game allowed. Last year, they were at 3 goals per game allowed, 15th in the NHL. 2 years ago, they were 27th at 3.6. They're suppressing goals. They're suppressing high-danger chances, and a big part of that is Philip Broberg, what he's brought to the defensive core. I think their forwards are much better in their own zone than they were a year ago. So, yes, they're sticking up for each other. That's a huge piece of this. I also think this is just a better team, just a flat-out better team. I think sometimes we can overrate the vibes and all of that. It's important. And when you lose it completely the way that they did a couple of years ago, it can lead to everybody being miserable in the room. That doesn't help anything. I just think this team's better. I think they're deeper. I think they have better forwards. I think they have much better defending in their own zone. So to me, that is the biggest change, is I feel better about the way that they play in their own zone. And I think this is a sustainable way for them to be able to win.
And it feels like we talk about him just about every single day. But to your point about how this team looks better defensively, I think a lot of it goes to Philip Broberg and what he's been able to do this season. He's only 23 years old. And I don't think anybody was really expecting Philip Broberg to make this much of an impact this season for the Blues, especially this early on. That pairing with him and Justin Falk is working out perfectly. I think we're also benefiting from seeing a healthy Justin Falk this season too, but that is working out flawlessly. And of course, he is human. He was on the ice for a goal against for that power play goal in the third period that you saw this past weekend, but that was the first goal against for Broberg. When he's out on the ice, you can feel the impact. Defensively, I feel better about this team this season too.
For sure. I think it's, like I said, I think it's the biggest change from what they were at this point last year. You go out there and every night I feel comfortable when your top 4 defenders are on the ice. I even feel okay for the most part when your third pair defensively is out there this season. There were times last year where I would see a defensive pairing come over the boards and I'd be like, oh no, this is going to end really, really poorly. I think they skate better. I think they're faster than they were last year. I still have some question marks. I do not think this is a perfect team. I'm not trying to suggest that. I think sometimes when we talk positively about something, it's like, oh, well, Pollyanna, everything's better. No, they've got some stuff to work out. They fall behind way too often. There are individual periods where they just forget that they need to go out there and play hockey. But I think they have fixed their structure defensively much better than they were last year and last couple of seasons. And I think that they have a little higher upside as well because of what they have added on the wing. You add that all up, this is a team that's really fun to watch. I legitimately enjoy watching Blues hockey. And at this point last year, I remember talking to Alex about it. It was early in the season, and I was like, man, the record is not reflective of how I feel when I watch this team. Because the Blues had, at one point, they were 8-5-1 coming off of that game against Tampa Bay. And I was like, man, I just don't like watching them. They're not fun. Like, there's something that's missing about their game.
Yes.
I feel the opposite this year. This year, even if they were losing, I am enjoying watching the process of them, seeing the young guys, seeing guys that I think are going to be around here for the long haul, and that's a very different experience just as a fan watching them.
And that's the key there, is that it really felt like maybe there was some redundancy with some of the players, that maybe things were kind of stale energy-wise, because you mentioned this earlier, and I thought it was a really good point, too, about the difference that you've seen from the season is they're able to recover from a bad period. Yes, they've been able to, a lot of their games have been come from behind victories, or they've been in come from behind games, but at the same time, you feel differently about this group depth-wise and energy-wise, where it shows that they have a little bit more fight, where even if they have a bad period, they're able to recover from that.
And last year, you get into a bad period,
and it felt like it was done.
I knew right then and there, I was like, okay, cool, I can go do other stuff now. I can go hang out with a little guy around the house. I don't have to watch the rest of this game. I've seen what the story was of this one. They didn't come out strong, and okay, everybody's going to let go of the rope. This one's going to end in disaster for the Blues. This year, it's the opposite. They can have that bad period, as they did on Saturday. They took a while to get to their game, but then in the second period, they come back out. They don't let go of the rope. They're all pulling in the right direction. I know these are cliches, but it's true about this team compared to what they were a year ago. You should feel better about them watching every single night.
From the text line, give Ryan Suter some credit also. He makes it look easy. He is smart with that experience. The experience, too, that he was able to bring in is key. I was never expecting him to be paired with Colton Parayko. I worried about the amount of minutes, especially at his age, but it's paying off. He's complimentary of Colton Parayko, which I think is something that Parayko needs. We've talked about that you kind of need to find a player that complements Parayko, and Suter is doing really well. It feels like he's turned back the clock.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to plan on having this be the pairing all year long. I don't think that that's something that would go well over time, but I underestimated a couple of different players on this team, I think, based on what we've seen already so far this year. I underestimated Suter. I didn't think he could play in this role at any point in the season, and clearly, if you need him in a pinch, he can go up there and play top pair minutes for you still at this point in his advanced age. Philip Broberg, I didn't think he was going to be this good this quickly. Just didn't believe it. And he's had a point in every game so far this year. He's tied for the lead on the team in plus minus. You mentioned it. He still has not given up a goal at 5-on-5 so far this year. He's been excellent for them. I underestimated what Zach Bolduc could be. I think the Blues underestimated to a degree what Zach Bolduc could be for them at this point. Dylan Holloway's been really good. So yeah, this was a masterclass of offseason moves for Doug Armstrong. He went out there and added exactly what they were missing from a year ago. And it's all coming together right now in a way that is a lot of fun to watch as a fan.
The conversation went from this might be a rebuild, retool for a while for the Blues to the offseason acquisitions really changed that conversation of how, yes, this could be in the rebuild category, but it'd be moving along a lot quicker than expected.
For sure.
That's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we have our NFL highlights and lowlights. And guys, I think I've gotten to the point where I need to stop talking about a particular team. And I'll explain why coming up next here on the opening drive.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. We have a World Series set thanks to the Yankees finishing off the Cleveland Guardians and then the Dodgers finishing off the Mets. It is a Dodgers and Yankees World Series, and that will start on Friday night, Yankees at Dodgers for Game 1 of that matchup. Also over the weekend, a big college football weekend, the Missouri Tigers get a 21-17 win over the Auburn Tigers, Fighting Illini taking down Michigan 21-7. And, of course, there was the upset, the Tennessee Volunteers over Alabama as well over the weekend. St. Louis Blues were in action. They got a big 4-3 win over the Hurricanes, and they will be back in action tomorrow right here on 101 ESPN, your home for the St. Louis Blues. And if you want to hear more Blues talk, you can wait for our Dobbs Tire and Auto Center podcast later today as we talked it over with Chris Kerber. That is your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Brooke and BK and Rocco here, and it is time for our NFL highlights and lowlights. And we're going to start things off on a high note with highlights. And I'll go first here, BK. In the NFC North battle, the Lions handing the Vikings their first loss of the season. And I think that Jared Goff deserves more credit nationally. I think that he even needs to be in the MVP conversation. Goff, he would end up going 22 for 25 with 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions versus the Vikings. And the Vikings are a really good team. That NFC North battle is really, really fun to watch because there's a lot of good teams there. And honestly, it doesn't surprise me that now the Lions are on top. I think they're the best team in the NFC. We discussed this earlier, and I think that Jared Goff deserves a lot more credit for what he's been able to do. Remember, it felt like the way that things ended with him and the Rams was just so bad, especially with Sean McVay. And now he has this resurgence, this redemption with the Lions. And I like everything about the Lions. I was not expecting, I was kind of curious how things would go without Hutchinson and how much that would affect them. But they continue to find a way. And I think that Jared Goff needs to be in the MVP conversation.
You could put him into the MVP conversation, but they're just a well-rounded team, man. They do everything well. Jahmyr Gibbs had an awesome game for them in this one against the Vikings. The defense had some moments. You look over on the defensive side of the ball, they're not perfect. They're very, very flawed on that side of the ball. They're going to give up some points, but they're also going to make some plays. Brian Branch, watch that dude every week and watch him make 3 unbelievable plays. It's always something different. It's an interception where he just happens to be in the exact right spot, timing the ball up at the exact right time. He'll make a couple of huge tackles on 3rd down. Brian Branch does everything correct. I can't believe the NFL overthought it with him. He's been a great player since his Alabama days. He just always makes plays. They're a really fun team to watch. They encapsulate everything that is Dan Campbell, and he is one of my favorite human beings in the NFL to watch. So it was an awesome win for them. I had no strong lean in that game because I felt like those are 2 teams that are really, really similar in terms of how I feel about them. As of today, I said earlier, I would pick the Green Bay Packers to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. My stronger take is I'm very confident somebody from the NFC North will be representing the conference in the Super Bowl.
I think it's a good bet there.
To both you and BK's points about just Jared Goff's dominance and the overall strength of the Detroit Lions, Adam Schefter tweeted this out just about 10 minutes ago. In the past 4 games, the Detroit Lions have scored more touchdowns, 18, than Jared Goff has had incompletions, 15.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is an unbelievable stat. And my point, I'm so glad you brought up Brian Branch because he's a great example of you don't hear the name of good safeties because they don't get burned, but you do hear the name a lot of great safeties because they make splash plays like that. And he's a fantastic example of, you're not hearing his name because he's getting burned. You're hearing his name because he's everywhere at once.
In the past 4 games, by the way, with Jared Goff, just to add to my point, he has an 83.5 completion percentage, setting an NFL record for the highest completion percentage over any 4-game span in NFL history, minimum 90 attempts. Jaden Daniels also had it earlier this season, but Jared Goff has now surpassed that. He deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do.
He's been amazing. He's been legitimately amazing. All right, so for my highlight coming off of this weekend, a lot of people are going to be talking about the Chiefs today because of what they were able to do yesterday against the San Francisco 49ers. Another win, and another win where they won it ugly. Patrick Mahomes did not have a great game. He threw 2 interceptions. You'll probably see some people tweeting about his quarterback rating, which was 45, by the way. Not great.
Also his overall touchdown interception ratio for the season,
which is more interceptions so far this year than touchdowns. And yet, if I have seen correctly, he's still one of the top 3 guys for MVP on the year.
Well, the team's struggling though, right?
Yeah, of course. They're undefeated. They have yet to lose, and that's because of the defense. It is time to put some serious respect on this Chiefs defense. Steve Spagnuolo is presiding over one of the most dominant units in the NFL. And I'm not talking about just defenses. I'm talking units. If you want to look at the best units in the league right now, the Chiefs defense is right up there. And that's been the case since midway through last season. They've been amazing. They lose L'Jarius Sneed this past offseason, one of their best corners, an all-pro. And they have hit the ground running. Now, they lost Jalen Watson, their number 2 corner, over the weekend. He broke his ankle. That's going to be a huge loss to them. But they have not allowed 25 points or more in 15 consecutive games, the longest such streak in the NFL right now. Second is the Chicago Bears. They have an active 12-game streak of allowing 25 or fewer points. The last time that the Chiefs allowed more than 25 was against the Packers last season. That was the only time the Chiefs have allowed 27 points in the last 2 years.
This is Steve Spagnuolo. He's been the bane of my existence.
This has been an unbelievable run for the Chiefs defense, and I don't think they get enough talk because we spend so much time talking about the Chiefs offense and what's wrong with them.
Of course.
I think it's taken a really long time for people to come around to the fact that this is a defense-first team right now. And the defense is what's winning them a lot of football games.
Well, you even saw that last year, right?
Yep.
You know, last year, honestly, the Chiefs defense is what carried them into the Super Bowl. And they also gave them enough time to get things together offensively, for Patrick Mahomes to get things together offensively. And he doesn't have the weapons again this year that he's had in years past, but they still find a way. And that's because the defense is able to give them time to do so. And they're also carrying them into wins. And that is the big story. Spags deserves all the credit in the world for what he's been able to do for this Chiefs defense. They are the story for the Chiefs this year. It feels like the Chiefs, and I get so jealous. You know, I get so jealous because of the team that I'm about to talk about for my low light, but I just want to give credit to the Chiefs because it feels like they're like the Wolverine of the NFL of no matter how many, times they get hurt or anything like that, they're able to just heal and find a way to continue on.
Yeah, they lose over the weekend Juju Smith-Schuster, which I can't believe I'm saying this. That was a huge loss for them. And their top leading receivers in this game, Noah Gray, whom a lot of people probably didn't know about prior to this game. Samaje Perine, who had 1 catch for 22 yards. He was their second leading receiver in the game. Xavier Worthy, McCole Hardman. Those were the top 4 receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that they won against the 49ers 28-18.
You see that route from McCole Hardman down there in the red zone when he peeled off to the side and didn't even get to the ball? I mean, he's a great receiver. I really think he could have a big year for the Chiefs.
He did have a good game. A really good game. He turns into Jerry Rice against the 49ers exclusively. Then he'll go back to not playing for the rest of the season. It's
exactly.
crazy.
All right, my low light, and BK and Rocc, I think I'm at the point where I'm done talking about the Tennessee Titans after this because it is really, hey, just let me get this out of the way. This is a therapy session for me, okay? I'm just trying to get this out because much like the Titans waving the white flag on the season, I am too. That was absolutely disastrous what we saw this weekend, and it's the Bills. I will give them credit. They are the Bills. Josh Allen is fantastic, but the Titans just really didn't put up any sort of fight. 34-10 was the final score. You had Mason Rudolph as your quarterback in the game. And look, was he better than Will Levis? Yeah, a little bit, but it shows you that this team is far from just a quarterback away from solving their problems. There are so many deep-rooted issues right now with the Tennessee Titans, as you saw at the end of the game, too. DeAndre Hopkins on the sidelines, and it seems like there's something going on with him and Callahan. He wasn't used at all in the fourth quarter, so now you have trade rumors coming about. Calvin Ridley, they spent all that money on him just for him to not really be utilized whatsoever. It is a disaster. We are actually out of the disaster category, and we're now in dumpster fire category for the Tennessee Titans.
Brooke, the good thing is you guys can reset. You get rid of your old quarterback. You get rid of this head coach that you've gotten sick of over the last few years. And that front office, that front office that has been there for years, making all these mistakes. You just get rid of this old group and you bring in a brand new, fresh group next year, Brooke. It's going to be great.
No, the Titans already did that. They got rid of Jim Robinson. They got rid of Mike Vrabel. They brought in Brian Callahan. And this is where we are at currently right now is a team just completely lost. It shows that there is something deeper going on here. And I don't know how you solve it. It's just bad. It's bad football, bad to watch. Titans fans, I don't know what we do. Tighten up with a sad fist pump.
Your team has fewer than 1,000 yards passing on the season.
Yeah, that was fun when you pointed that out during the break, and it's even better to hear now, BK. It's just like a stab in the heart.
How does that happen? We're 6 games
You have
into
Will
the
Levis
year.
and Mason
BK.
Rudolph as your quarterbacks. That's how that happens, and you have a bad offensive line.
It's not like you were here 2 weeks ago when we talked about how passing has come alive in the NFL. It's been dead the entire season. Multiple teams all over the NFL are having this issue. It's a dead offensive season, BK, obviously.
It's come back to life, unfortunately, except for Titans. They have not seen that kind of a bounce. Now, I will say this. If I had told you prior to the season, Brooke, that the Titans would have the same touchdown to interception ratio at this point in the year as Patrick Mahomes, you probably would have signed up for it.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds great.
What you didn't know at that point in time is that it was a 6 to 8 touchdown to interception ratio.
Well, obviously, I mean, Jamal Adams and that Titans defense have been doing great work.
Sure,
right?
yeah. He's not around any longer.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everything else is going super well.
Yeah, everything is just peachy.
Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
All right, my low light from the NFL weekend was a team that I bet on in our football pick'em challenge, and it was in a game last night.
Here's Rodgers back, sideline slaying Wilson, intercepted. He didn't catch it. Beatty Bishop did. Beatty's got 2. Beatty has almost 6. He's down to the 1-yard line.
So that's what it sounded like last night as Aaron Rodgers threw yet another interception. Did not reach the 300-yard mark. I know a lot of people are paying attention to that. It's been 3 years since Aaron Rodgers has thrown for 300 yards in a football game. They finished with 54 yards on the ground as a team. This team stinks. Davante Adams is added to the mix. He gets 3 catches on 9 targets last night. They were trying to get him involved, just couldn't find a way to do so. The defense isn't very good. They give up 37 points to the Steelers. Russell Wilson and the Steelers, they suddenly have life. George Pickens looked like a different guy last night.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, he was fantastic.
Russell Wilson throwing him the football. They were running all over them defensively. The Jets legitimately seemed to believe they were a wide receiver away from being a legitimate contender. And my dumb behind fell for it. I was like, yeah, you know what? They're probably right. They'll definitely play inspired this weekend against the Steelers.
Did you fall for that, or did you fall for Rodgers and Adams magic?
I fell for that. I fell for the notion that, hey, for one game at least, it's going to look like the old version of
No,
them.
it was not.
No, they're just bad. They're just a really bad football team. I'm out on the Jets. I'm totally out on them. I don't think they can make the playoffs this year. I think this season is already over for them. There's nowhere left to turn. They have fired the coach. They added Davante Adams. There's nothing they can announce today that would be like, oh, well, that's going to get the narrative back on track. No, man, you stink. Thank God they play New England this weekend. That is the recipe for success for any team in the NFL right now, including the Jaguars, who just beat up on them. But otherwise, I don't see a whole lot of wins left on this. They're like a 6 or 7 win team, in my opinion.
It really does seem like every single week they've tried to do something to spark something differently with this team. As you mentioned, they got rid of Saleh, and then you bring in Davante Adams. Newsflash, it's not 2021 anymore. Of course, it was not going to work out for him. They are not a wide receiver away from being fixed. And I think, to your point, to be fair, I think some other people might have bought into that too. I still thought that, it wasn't going to change anything. It just really feels like this Jets team has a lot more issues than just adding another wide receiver into the mix. And on the other side of it, the Steelers, I'm never going to doubt Mike Tomlin again, right?
Unbelievable.
Because he went with Russell Wilson, and as you mentioned, Pickens went off in that game. It was absolutely nuts to see. Russell Wilson, that resurgence, not something I expected, but I'm not going to doubt Tomlin ever again. That was just such a wacky game where I was not expecting the result whatsoever.
That was a goofy one.
It was goofy.
There's still a bunch of teams even at this point. This is what you get when preseason. I don't remember a lot of week like 8s or 9s where we were going into it. And I was like, there's 9 NFL teams that I legitimately would feel like terrified picking them in a pick'em week to week right now because I have no idea what they are, and I feel like.
Dude, how about tonight? Chargers Cardinals. Good luck.
I have no idea.
I think the Chargers are pretty good. But I have no idea. Is that going to travel? Are they going to be able to do the thing where they run the ball 40 times and don't throw it until they absolutely have to?
Is Rashawn Slater actually going to play like a string of games longer than 3 or 4?
Bucks, Ravens. I think the Ravens are really good.
Yeah.
I think the Bucks are pretty good too, though. And is Baker Mayfield going to have another one of those games where he throws for 350 through the air? It's possible. It's a weird year, man. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like college football in that regard. I'm not sure there's a great team in the NFL this season. There's a lot of really good ones, though.
I like it. Football is always better when there's parity. It's the any given Sunday mentality. It's a cliche because it works and it's true. And this season we got it again. And the good thing is we do have teams like the weird ones like the Chargers who are winning while never throwing the ball, despite the fact they have one of the statistically best young throwing quarterbacks in the history of the entire league in Justin Herbert. But Harbaugh's a madman. And then you have the Ravens, and you never know what exactly you're going to get from Lamar, whether it's going to be sophomore year Lamar where he's airing it out, or the last couple of years Lamar where he's all over on the ground. It's fantastic. I love it. And as much as I want to hate the NFL, I honestly am so jacked up for a double Monday Night Football. I have my 2 TV set up, and I can't wait for it. Tonight's going to be a blast.
That's BK, Rocky, and I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we have Rocc N Roll. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here, and I want to tell you why I love the Missouri Athletic Club. It's because it really feels like I've joined a community. They offer so many different great events to just mix and mingle and really network with people here in St. Louis. I love going to the downtown location for all the great events that they host, like the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame, where Randy Kerber was inducted. That was so much fun, and it was a great, fantastic evening. And I love going over to the West location and just hanging out over there. I like to play tennis in their indoor courts or go over to work out or just even catch some lunch. They always provide such a wonderful experience, and that's why I love my MAC.
Rocc N Roll.
Let's rock. Let's rock today.
Brooke, BK, and Rocco here, and we have a very maybe short Rocc N Roll.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one little story that we didn't get to talk to about a lot today was the chicanery, if you want to call it, that went on in the Texas game over the weekend. Obviously, when you had the moment where the fans decided to throw things on the field, obviously a lot of jokes went off in college football because the idea was you throw things on the field and then you get the refs to huddle back up and change the call. Seems like a pretty bad precedent to set for sports, college football, so on and so forth. The SEC, though, on Sunday came down with their punishment for Texas. If you haven't seen it, they will be assessed a financial penalty of $250,000. The big one, though, they're now required to use all available resources, including security, stadium, and television video, to identify individuals who threw objects onto the playing field or at the opposing team. All individuals identified as having been involved in disrupting the game shall be prohibited from attending Texas athletic events for the remainder of the 2024-2025 academic and athletic seasons. There's a couple other stipulations as well. You can go to the SEC's website to look that one up there. But pretty crappy to lose your chance to go actually watch them in a playoff game potentially just because you decided to throw things on the field.
How do you do this?
You get it. You get what you deserve, you little twerps.
Sure, but how do you do that?
Yeah, that's the thing is, how do you do this? And you know that there is somebody's donor-rich child in those stands that threw something on the field, and then this will be brushed under the rug real quick.
Yeah, they're going to go back through, do facial recognition and have every student be disallowed from going. No, they're not actually going to. They're not going to actually do anything with this. Those people are stupid. Those people are dumb, and they shouldn't. Don't throw stuff on the field, guys. This feels like such a simple thing. If you go to a basketball game, don't talk trash. Don't say something that is disrespectful and then assume that nothing's going to happen to you. You remember the Marcus Smart thing when he was in college?
Yes.
These people are human beings, and you can't just go out there and do things assuming that there will be no repercussions for what you're doing out there. So this was dumb. It was a bad moment for Texas fans. It could have happened anywhere. Don't do this stuff, guys. It's really stupid.
I can't believe that people even do that, where you get unruly. I even see there's so many fights at games, too. I'm sure you've seen the videos all over social media. I'm like, so wait a minute. You spent all this money. You spent an entire day dedicated to this game. You get to the game, and you can't handle yourself as an adult, and you get in a fight, or you throw something out on the field at players. Why would you do that?
It's stupid. Just pure stupidity.
I personally love any chance the University of Texas can look like a bunch of asses on national television. So doing that from the fan base and then having the team failing to actually take advantage of this change call to get back into the game completely and losing by 2 scores. That just, I was so wrong after my comments on Friday with Randy, where I was like, no, I think Texas might just continue to run the table. But I love being wrong sometimes. Horns down forever.
That's what you like to see, right? I don't think anybody was expecting that. And even, did you see Kirby Smart, too, after the game, where he kind of tore into the reporter? Not necessarily her, but talking about ESPN doubting that Georgia would be able to beat Texas.
It's the only time he's used that line that he hasn't been blatantly lying to everyone as he says
nobody... College football teams love nothing more than being disrespected.
Yes. Oh.
Whether it's real or fake, they do not care.
Again, when Kirby was saying that in the midst of all these wins over their 2-year run as national champions, he was lying. He actually had a point that night to say, no, he was going up against undefeated number 1. Everyone was still rolling with Texas for the most part. He actually didn't 100% lie, but that is the first time he said that in the last 28 times he said that where he wasn't lying.
The funny thing is,
good for
every
you,
team in the country other than Oregon can use that this year.
Exactly.
Every single one of them.
100%.
Exactly.
If you're Mizzou, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, hey, look, we keep winning and we keep dropping in the polls. Every team has something like that they could use. If you're Iowa State right now, hey, we're undefeated, 7-0, 10th in the country is what that's been able to get us. BYU 7-0, 11th in the country right now is the respect that we get for that.
We get it from 636. The problem is that they set a precedent. The problem is, refs have gotten together and worked on and been no, I missed this one. Let's go back and look at it's not the best precedent in the world, but it's also not the most unprecedented thing.
You're
talking
about
seen.
the Texas.
Yeah.
Texas,
I get why people get up in arms and listen, now you set the precedent of you just throw stuff on the field, stop the game, and you'll get a review of the call. We've seen refs get together and change calls like this every single time the team who catches the short end of the stick calls correct corruption and things like that. That's not really the case. I think that because of the game and because of what happened, it feels like that's the only reason. I feel like they got the call right. They probably would have gotten the call right. The ref came out and said, mea culpa on that one, and they got the call right. That's what should happen in that situation. I don't think it's just because of the trash getting thrown on the field. Nonetheless, it was a good moment to connect those two and have some fun.
You know what, guys? Nobody pays attention to the rat poison, right? That's what all the coaches say. They don't pay attention to the rat poison. I don't know. Nothing is bulletin board material for them. Thanks for Rocc N Roll, Rocc.
No problem, baby.
And great show today. BK, thank you for filling
Appreciate
in.
you guys. It's been
I don't
great.
know.
Always enjoy it.
You're another member of the opening drive at this point. On Mondays,
Honorary
at least.
member here on Mondays. Honorary member for the Fast Lane for a Pick'em Challenge, which did not go well for me this week. I'm sure the guys will talk about that later on this afternoon. It's fun. It's fun times.
Thank you for joining us, BK. And thank you all for listening. We have the balloon party coming next here on 101 ESPN.